Chapter 1145. This phone is so magical. It wasn't that little soprano had never seen her parents talk on the phone before. However, standing in front of her sister, and watching her press the red button for a while before she started talking, it could be said that this was the first time she had seen it from such a close distance. This feeling was different. Tong Tong stared at his sister with his big, curious eyes. Although his sister was happily talking to Sister Fishy, Tong Tong did not pay attention to what his sister was talking about. His gaze finally landed on the phone that was pressing against his sister's skirt. After a while, she finished making the first call. She put down the phone and moved it to the sofa beside her. She got down from Tong Tong's side excitedly and ran to the kitchen in a hurry. "I'm going to look for Papa." Tong Tong did not want to look for Papa. He was very interested in the phone now. It was just as well that his sister was leaving. He did not have to ask his sister to share the phone with him. Tong Tong came back to his senses and grinned happily. He reached out his small hand and hooked it. His hand was too short to reach the phone. Tong Tong was not discouraged. He swiftly pressed down on the sofa and climbed up with his butt sticking out. Tong Tong followed his sister's example and grabbed the phone. What was interesting was that he didn't pull the receiver down. The receiver was facing his hair, and the receiver was facing his chin. If it weren't for the wrong position, the little guy would have really made a phone call. Huh. Wow. Huh. Tong Tong mumbled a few times. However, he realized that there was no sound from the phone as he had expected. He looked at the phone in his hand suspiciously. "That's right. My sister pressed the red button on the phone when she made the call." Tong Tong was very good at imitating. He followed his sister's example and pressed the button on the phone. She ran to report her work progress to her father. After a while, Yang Yi pushed her out of the kitchen and said with a smile, "Since you have asked about Fishy, you can record her situation on the form that we just gave you. You can make a decision after you have tallied up everyone's situation." "All right. But little Fishy is fine with anything." She turned around and said to her father hesitantly. "It's the same. Put a tick in every box," Yang Yi said. When they arrived at the living room, Yang Yi planned to instruct Shishi to do the first statistics before going back. However, to their surprise, they saw Tong Tong talking to the phone with a serious face. No there. The little fellow was still waving his little hands, as if he was very anxious. When he saw his sister appear, he seemed to have an inspiration. "Mommy," sister said. "Why was this kid playing with his phone? Who was he talking to?" Yang Yi was stunned for a moment, but he immediately reacted and reached out to Tong Tong for the phone. Tong Tong also felt that he could not express himself clearly. When he saw his father, it was as if he had seen his savior. He quickly passed the phone to his father. However, he still did not know that he had done something wrong. He giggled and looked at his father expectantly. He wanted to see how his father would make the phone call. "Hello, I'm sorry. Just now." After Yang Yi took the phone and was about to explain and apologize, he found that there was only a long beep sound coming from the receiver. Obviously, the other party had hung up at some point. Or Tong Tong did not make the call at all? Then why was he talking so enthusiastically? Yang Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry as he put the phone back. Then he picked up Tong Tong and pinched his chubby little face. He laughed and said, "Why are you playing with your phone? You can't play with these electronic devices casually." Tong Tong blinked and pointed at his sister, who was putting the phone back in her original position. She was more active in helping her brother. She raised her head and reached out to hold her father's wrist. She whispered, "Papa, don't scold my brother. My brother only played with his phone because he saw that I was talking on the phone." Oh. When Tong Tong heard his sister's words, he seemed to feel that the atmosphere was not right. He knew that he had done something wrong, so he hesitantly leaned against his father's chest and did not dare to speak carelessly. Last time, he tore his sister's book and was scolded by his father. When he made a mistake, his father was scarier. The witty Tong Tong felt that it was better for him to be obedient at this time. Yang Yi was not angry that Tong Tong and Shishi had made the wrong judgment. He just felt that it was funny, especially when Tong Tong pretended to hold the phone and talk on the phone, but no one was talking to him. Yang Yi felt that it was funny when he thought about it. "It's okay." Yang Yi smiled and touched Tong Tong's little nose. he said softly. Papa is not scolding you. It's just that you don't know how to use the phone yet. When you grow up, Papa and Mama will teach you how to use the phone. Tong Tong playing with the phone was just a small episode, and he did not make a big mistake like calling the police. Therefore, after Yang Yi gently covered it up, he let Shishi continue with her work. Papa, look. After making phone calls all morning, the little girl finally finished counting. She ran over and stuffed her booklet into her father's hands. She looked at her father's face expectantly, hoping that her father would praise her. Very good. You finished counting. Yang Yi did not let his daughter down. After taking a look at Shishi's statistics, he gave the little girl a thumbs up. Shishi smiled and snuggled up to her father with satisfaction. She said, Papa, what should we do next? Yang Yi gestured at the table and analyzed it for Shishi. Look at the vertical bar. Many people are not free on Wednesday, and many on Thursday and Friday. Just as Papa guessed, they are free on the weekend. Yes, but Chi-Chi is not free on Saturday. Shishi had a good memory. She quickly said to her father, because Chi-Chi is going to have piano lessons. She told me that she wants to learn piano. Piano lessons? If there is an arrangement, it will be difficult to adjust. Nan Zhaoyu is not free on Saturday and Sunday, and only Nan Zhaoyu is not free on Sunday. What does he want to do? Yang Yi raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. Zhaoyu? Well, he doesn't want to do anything. Shishi also thought for a while before connecting the dots. Her eyes lit up and she said to her father, I know, Zhaoyu said that his papa and mom are going to do something, and then they are not free. Yang Yi could roughly guess what the situation was. After Nan Iyun got better, he often attended some calligraphy activities to earn some tuition for Nan Zhaoyu's college fees. Nan Zhaoyu's mother also had to accompany him. Sometimes they would take Nan Zhaoyu, and sometimes they would let him read at home. Therefore, sometimes on weekends, when Shishi invited her friends to her house to play, Nan Zhaoyu often regretted that he could not come. However, Yang Yi's eyes flashed with a strange light. He said in his heart, should I kick this kid out? He is obviously a boy. Why does he play with girls all day? However, he only thought about it for a moment. Soon he shook his head and tossed the thought away. It was not worthwhile to scheme against a child. Therefore Yang Yi smiled and said to Shishi, that's easy. We can ask. Since his parents are not free, let's see if they agree. We will pick up Nan Zhaoyu on Sunday and visit with them. After the visit, we will send him back. I think his parents will agree. Yes. If Zhaoyu's papa and mom agree, that would be great. Shishi nodded with joy. Yang Yi rubbed the little girl's head with jealousy and said with a smile, go and make the call. This is your job. Chapter 1146. Perhaps for Lan Xian, who procrastinated and didn't like to do her summer homework and ended up being stared at by her angry mother, the past few days were particularly long. However, for Cici, who had been looking forward to the weekend all day long, time passed very quickly. Finally, the weekend came, and the little guys were finally liberated. Early in the morning, the little girls happily came to Shishi's house. It was like a spring outing. Each of the little girls wore their favorite small skirts, their favorite butterfly sandals, or their favorite pink sneakers. They got on the minibus and were ready to go to the factory. Of course, their first stop was still to pick up Nan Zhaoyu, who was still waiting for them at home. Since his parents were not at home, Yang Yi went to pick up Nan Zhaoyu. He also told the excited little boy to lock the door. Then Nan Zhaoyu ran downstairs, carrying his small school bag, and rushed to Shishi's minibus. Yang Yi followed behind and heard the little boy gasping for breath. He said to his little friends, oh, great. You finally came. I thought you had already left. You don't want me anymore. Seeing him talking and laughing with the little girls, Yang Yi laughed in his heart. When they arrived at the doll factory, Lu Benji and the factory's director were already waiting there. The big boss was bringing the future little boss to inspect. How could they not cheer up? What's more, Yang Yi also asked Lu Benji to be in charge of this matter. He asked him to prepare and plan the children's tour route. After all, he couldn't arrange for the children to watch the production line of some creepy dolls. There would be a lot of doll parts there, such as broken heads and arms flowing on the conveyor belt. Naturally, these scenes should be avoided from the children. How to arrange this trip so that the children would not feel that the tour was scary, but would feel that it was very interesting. In addition, it would be best if they could learn some knowledge. This was a headache for Lu Benji. Fortunately, Lu Benji was worthy of the high salary that Yang Yi had given him. In just a few days, he had arranged the work that his boss had given him. Let's put on our safety helmets first, because we're going to visit the factory first. In the factory, safety is always our first priority. Lu Benji volunteered to take on the responsibility of hosting and explaining. He smiled and handed over the small safety helmets specially made for the children. Wearing the safety helmet was uncomfortable, but the interesting thing was that none of the children complained. Instead, they felt that the safety helmet was very novel. It was a small yellow hat with a hard plastic top. Thus, they lined up to receive the safety helmet and scrambled to put it on. She, look at me. After Chen Shiryan put on the safety helmet, she smiled foolishly and ran to Shishi. She stuck her head out to Shishi and said, "Knock, knock a few more times." Shishi was puzzled and knocked on the plastic shell a few times. Chen Shiryan then raised her head and said proudly, "Hee, Shishi, my head can be used as a drum." Shishi was also amused by her little friend. She smiled and asked, "Shiryan, won't your head hurt?" "Nope. You try it too." Chen Shiryan was an impatient person, and she did things swiftly and decisively. Therefore, before she finished speaking, she reached out her hand and knocked on Sisi's helmet. "Aya!" Shishi exclaimed. Chen Shiryan's eyes widened. She thought that she had hurt Shishi. She nervously and worriedly grabbed Shishi's arm and whispered, "Aya, why does it hurt?" Shishi was no longer frowning. She regained her bright smile and said, "Hee, it doesn't hurt. I was just shocked when you suddenly knocked on my head." Chen Shiryan was relieved. She smiled proudly at Shishi and squinted her eyes. "See, I told you it doesn't hurt." Yang Yi also put a super small safety helmet on Tong Tong. It was probably custom made by Lu Benji for Tong Tong. However, the little guy seemed to feel a little uncomfortable, especially when the strap was hanging under his neck. It made him feel a little uncomfortable, so he reached out to push the hat. Yang Yi quickly pointed at Shishi and the others and said to Tong Tong, "Look at the big sisters wearing them. It's so fun." Tong Tong looked at the big sisters playing happily. He blinked his eyes in confusion. Finally, under the influence of his big sisters, he agreed to wear the safety helmet. What was interesting was that after putting on the safety helmet, perhaps because there was something pressing down on his head, little Momo seemed to have put on a golden hoop and became obedient. Earlier, he was still making a fuss about going down to stand with his sisters. Now he was quietly being carried by his father. He even looked up at the big factory with some effort, and no longer had the energy to make a fuss. This was good. Yang Yi was also worried that Tong Tong would run around. After all, this was a factory, and there were a lot of dangerous machines. As for Shishi and the others, Yang Yi and the other parents followed behind them to take care of the little guys. Let's go in from the west door. First, let's take a look at the clothes made by our dolls. Look at the beautiful clothes such as Elsa's and Anna's dresses, okay? Lu Benji was very competent as a tour guide. He coaxed the group of children as if they were children. Okay. Shishi and the others responded at the same time. Although it was inconvenient to look up with the safety helmet, they still tried their best to look up and looked at Uncle Lu with excitement. Shishi was more enthusiastic about translating to Lu Weisha. After translating, she said excitedly, "Lu Weisha, let me tell you, Elsa's dress is blue and white. It's very beautiful. Anna's dress is in many colors, and I like the purple one the most." When Yang Yi heard Lu Benji's arrangement to go in from the west door, he knew what Lu Benji had in mind. That was actually the core area of the doll factory. Compared to the other areas, although there were mechanical aids, it was definitely not an assembly line operation. The dolls made in other areas were almost all very cheap and mass-produced products. For example, the dolls sold in supermarkets for 9.90 yuan, and the dolls sold in bookstores or shopping malls for less than 500 yuan were all made on an assembly line. As for the west door, it was the place where the factory hired a group of artisans with high salaries. They specialized in making commemorative or limited edition dolls. These dolls were also sold in the Sahara online shopping mall. Because of the exquisite workmanship and the exquisite materials, not only the fabric, but also the leather or high-end wood, and the high-quality packaging, the dolls were sold for thousands of yuan. Some of them were even sold for tens of thousands of yuan. It could be said that only the rich and fanatics could afford to play with high-end figurines. However, compared to the assembly line, such a production area might be more amiable to the children. It would not be scary to see a pile of broken arms piled up together. Chapter 1147. Walking into the workshop of the old craftsman in the doll factory, Lu Benji's enthusiasm was in vain, because there was a relatively large stone statue in front of them, as well as some anime figurines displayed on the shelves behind, which completely attracted the attention of the little guys. Wow! The exclamations came one after another, and the little guys looked at the dolls of different shapes with blurred eyes. They were so envious that they held their hands in front of them, wishing that they could pull out their hearts to show their friends. Their hearts were full of love for these dolls. The workshop here not only made frozen dolls, but also many figurines made according to the children's stories and prototype designs provided by Yang Yi. There was a frog prince with a crown on his head, Little Red Riding Hood with a red hat, and there was also a little squirrel with a sneaky look who was hugging an acorn and refusing to let go of it. So many cartoon characters that had only appeared in the form of illustrations in Shishi's bedtime stories now appeared in front of the children, which naturally awakened their best memories. Perhaps it was a visual impact, but even a shy little girl like Yang Luochi couldn't help but cheer. She ran up, turned around excitedly and said to her friends, "Wow! There are 7 dwarfs, 1, 2, 3. There are 7 of them." Not only was Yang Luochi very excited, but Yu Xiaowei also pursed her lips and quickly walked forward a few steps. Then she slowed down and looked back at her mother, uncles and aunts in embarrassment. "I recognize this one, but you definitely don't remember it." Chen Shiyun's eyes also lit up. She ran up, pointed to a long-nosed puppet, and shouted excitedly. Lan Xian didn't give him any face. She snorted and said, "I remember too. Isn't it just Pinocchio? Shishi's house also has one." Lu Weisha saw that her friends were discussing so enthusiastically, and she ran to the front eagerly. She used the Chinese that she had learned in less than half a month and said to everyone, "I like it, all of them. I like it." In fact, at this time, Shishi was not calm. The little girl was surprised to find that there were many dolls on the shelf that she didn't have. Although Lan Xian said that she had Pinocchio, it was only brought back by her father. Although the little girl didn't say anything, her eyes were wide open, and her gaze swept over the dolls one by one. Her little heart was beating wildly because of these dolls. There were some voices in her mind. "Oh, why are there so many? There are so many dolls that I don't have." Yes, she once thought that her house had most of the beautiful dolls in the world, but now she found that her collection was actually only a small part of the world. There were so many wonderful things that she hadn't explored yet. For a time, the little girl's heart was intertwined with many emotions. Loss, regret, surprise, joy, hesitation. Shishi's eyes couldn't move away from these shelves. She was still thinking that the gold coins in her small wooden box weren't enough to buy so many beautiful dolls. Moreover, Shishi also made an appointment with Lu Weisha to go to Lu Weisha's house to play in winter. Lu Weisha had told Shishi that her house had a very beautiful aurora. In winter, she could also ski, ride a sleigh, and so on. It's so hard to choose. The little girl was in a dilemma. However, her motivation to work hard to earn gold coins was once again stimulated. With dozens of gold coins in savings, the little girl had lost her motivation for a long time. Looking at the dolls on display, the little girls and boys, including Tong Tong, were reluctant to leave. It was only when Lu Benji promised that he would bring them back to pick a doll that they liked at the end of the day. This was originally planned, that the little guys obediently followed the adults to the craftsman's workshop in front of them. They didn't roll all over the floor and refused to leave. The first thing they visited was the craftsman's workshop. Currently, everyone was making dolls with a frozen theme. After all, these products, even if they were purely handmade, were in short supply. Therefore, when they saw a long robe made of fur on the table, The little guys excitedly shouted, "This is Kristoff's robe. He's a hunter." Why did they think that Kristoff was a hunter? Because the little guys could only think of the movie they watched last week. They thought that Kristoff, who could run wildly in the forest on a reindeer and dress like that, should be a hunter. Luckily, Shishi had a good memory. She had almost memorized the story of Sister Elsa by heart. She quickly stood up and explained to her little friends with a serious face, No, Kristoff is a worker. He's an ice digger." At the beginning, they were digging ice. Of course, this was just a small episode. Next, Lou Benji asked the craftsman to show the little guys how to sew a dress similar to Sister Elsa's dress. Although the craftsmen were only sewing the dress together with the half-finished blue-green slim-fit dress, the craftsman focused on the sewing machine. The little guys couldn't help but exclaim in admiration as they watched the machine, and the meticulous connection between the machine and the sewing machine. After all, they were all little girls. Perhaps they were naturally more interested in this kind of craftsmanship. They all watched with great interest for a long time, including Nan Zhaoyu. Tong Tong, on the other hand, wasn't very interested. After watching for a while, he turned his head, wearing a small safety hat, to look for other interesting projects. There really were some. After a while, the little guy saw a few craftsmen behind his father. They were using a carving knife to carve a wooden doll that hadn't fully formed yet. The way the wood shavings were picked out from time to time, and the way the carving knife flew up and down instantly attracted the little guy's attention. Tong Tong clung to his father's shoulders with his two little hands and watched intently. It was rare that he didn't make a fuss. He was very obedient, just like Sun Wukong, who wore a golden hoop. In this workshop, the little guys could see the process of making and assembling a purely handmade doll. Many craftsmen were demonstrating, and Uncle Lou was explaining. It was an eye-opener for the little guys. However, the beginning of the workshop was already such an exciting demonstration of the production of high-end dolls. Could there be even more exciting content in the following tours? Wouldn't it disappoint the little guys? Next, let's go to the next packaging workshop. There, we can understand how the cute and interesting dolls that our parents usually give you on your birthdays are delivered from the factory to your hands. Do you guys want to know more? Lou Benji, who was making a cameo appearance, said cheerfully as he greeted the little guys. Nan Zhaoyu, Lu Xiaoyu, and the other kids hadn't recovered from the dazzling demonstration just now, so they replied in a daze, "Yes." Shishi, on the other hand, was more enthusiastic. She giggled and said yes to her friends. Then she moved to the front, raised her head, and looked at Uncle Lou with sparkling eyes. She said, "Uncle Lou, I know that the dolls are all in the store. Then my papa will buy flowers and put the dolls in the flowers for my mom." Oh, I was wrong. Hee, this is a gift from my papa to my mom, not for me. The little girl scratched her head in embarrassment and laughed with a red face. The adults behind them also roared with laughter. Murphy, who was standing next to Yang Yi, was a little embarrassed. She wanted to hide behind Yang Yi, but she didn't want to be an adult. She could only smile helplessly, stomp her feet, and say angrily, "She." The little girl thought that everyone was laughing at her. Instead, she shyly ran behind her father and hid. Then she stuck out her little head, giggled, and whispered, "Papa didn't give me a doll as a birthday gift. It's a very beautiful treehouse, and I can turn on the lights." Chapter 1148. Of course, what Lou Benji wanted to show the children was not flowers, tree houses, or anything else that Shishi's little brain would think of. Soon, the children saw a completely automated packaging assembly line. "Here, these are the dolls that we produce. After being screened by our quality inspectors, they will all be gathered here." Lou Benji stood in front of a huge round plate and introduced it to the children. The large round plate that reflected a silver metallic light was densely packed with Mom's little snowbow dolls. Each of them was about the size of an adult's fist, and they were all stuffed with cloth and cotton. They looked as simple and adorable as Snowbow, but in terms of delicacy, these small dolls that were sold at the supermarket for 9.90 yuan could not be compared to the handmade wooden dolls or plush dolls that Shishi and the others had seen earlier. But there were many of them. Many of them were righteous. When the children saw so many Snowbows squeezed together, How could they care to see if it was as beautiful as they had seen earlier? They were all surprised and exclaimed softly, "Wow! There are so many snowbow." Shishi looked at the large round plate, and her big eyes were so excited that little stars almost appeared. Lu Xiaoyu, who loved Snowbow the most, even called out Snowbow's name, Olaf, and her body involuntarily moved closer. Fortunately, Shishi quickly pulled her deskmate back, and the especially serious little girl began to help maintain order. She hurriedly said to Lu Xiaoyu, "Little fishy, you can't touch it. It's dangerous." Lan Xian was also full of a sense of justice. She opened her arms in front of Lu Xiaoyu and shouted loudly, "Yes, you can't go over there. Uncle Lu just said that the machine is very scary. If it's not an adult, it will eat the children." The little girl's sentence order was a little wrong, but it sounded like there was nothing wrong with it. Lu Xiaoyu was frightened by the two of them. She nervously shrank her little arms, and seemed to be a little scared. Their side was very lively, and Nan Zhaoyu, who was a little slow, also shrank his head. He embarrassedly retracted his little hands that wanted to touch the dolls, but he had nowhere to put them, so he could only scratch his head. Lu Benji praised the two little girls who helped to maintain order, and then asked the worker to start the packaging line and demonstrate it to the children. The conveyor belt began to move. At first, there was a little noise from the gears, and it scared the little girls so that they hurriedly huddled together and hid next to their respective parents. Nan Zhaoyu was alone. Fortunately, Lu Benji went to hold his hand, and did not let him look left and right helplessly for too long. When the conveyor belt started moving, the sound of the gears became softer and less ear-piercing. At this time, the worker pressed another button, and a small opening opened at the bottom of the large circular plate. Because this large circular plate originally looked like a funnel, after this small opening, the dolls on top rolled down like ripe fruits on a tree. "Papa, it's falling." Shishi stood next to her father. She was nervous, but she could not help but look curiously. When she saw something interesting, she could not help but pull her father's hand and exclaim in a low voice, "After the conveyor belt moves, our dolls will gradually separate, and they will not be crowded together. Then you see, when we come here they are already in line, and they keep the same distance." Lu Benji walked in front and explained as he guided them. "So obedient," young Luochi muttered in a low voice. "Yes, they are very obedient, and so are you." Lu Benji laughed. Young Luochi realized that her whisper was heard, and she shrunk into her mother's arms, embarrassed. Next, they came to the core module of the assembly line, which was more high-tech. There was a mechanical arm, and the front end looked like a claw. The computer in the background would judge according to the information provided by the camera to the program, and then give the mechanical arm an accurate adjustment signal. The dolls that were not placed properly, side, upside down, face down, were all adjusted to the same position by the mechanical arm. "Wow! A robot!" Nan Zhaoyu walked in front and exclaimed as he watched. The little girls were also watching with great interest. Cece walked together with her father, and she felt that it was very magical. She raised her head and asked her father curiously, "Papa, Papa, why is this robot so powerful? How did it arrange Snowbow so well?" This question stumped Yang Yi. How could Yang Yi understand such a profound technical question? He pondered for a while, and frankly said, "There are a lot of scientific principles in this. Papa doesn't understand it, but when you grow up and learn more, you will have the opportunity to understand it." "Papa doesn't know?" Shishi said with some disappointment. "It's normal that Papa doesn't know." Yang Yi smiled, touched the little girl's head and said, "Papa is not omnipotent, but we can do this. When we go back, let's go online and find out how these robots move, okay?" The regret on Shishi's face immediately disappeared. She nodded happily and said with a sweet smile, "Okay. Hee Papa, we can make little brother's robot like this. It can move, and little brother will like it very much." Yang Yi looked down at Tong Tong. The little guy was also attracted by the mechanical arm. His big eyes under the helmet were focused on the big guy moving around, as if he was also trying to figure out what it was. "Haha, we can give it a try." Yang Yi did not dampen Shishi's spirits. He patted her on the shoulder and laughed. The packaging box at the back was automatically folded, And then the snowball dolls that were arranged neatly were stuffed into the packaging box one by one. There was no need to elaborate on the process of this visit. The little ones were very fascinated by it, even to the extent that other than Cece, who had many discoveries to share with her father, the other children could only exclaim and praise, forgetting to chat with each other. The assembly line was not boring. Compared with the previous ingenious works of the craftsman, this part of the tour was not so exquisite and pleasing to the eyes. However, the completely automatic packaging line was still an eye-opener for the children. It was as if they had walked into the world of technology from an era of handwork. The magical technology made them forget to go back. All right, now that we've finished visiting the packaging line, where should we go next? Does anyone know? Lou Benji deliberately kept them guessing and asked. As they were already familiar with each other, the children were not as shy as they were at the beginning. They enthusiastically participated in the interaction. Anyway, it's not going home, Chun Shiryun shouted loudly. Her answer made the girls giggle. Yes, we have a tour next, but do you know what it is? Lou Benji asked with a smile. We don't know. The honest Lu Xiaoyu and Nan Xiaoyu shook their heads. Cece, on the other hand, was actively thinking about the answer. At this time, she was no longer standing with her father. Instead, she was squeezing with her friends. The tall little girl even stood on her tiptoes and struggled to raise her small hand, wanting Uncle Lu to see her. She was very disciplined and did not rush to answer. Shishi, why don't you tell us? Lou Benji called her name as expected. Hehe, I know. We are going to see a lot of magical toys. Shishi's bright big eyes seemed to be able to speak. She revealed a bright smile and said crisply, in the car I heard you and my papa talking about it. You have prepared a lot of fun toys for us to see. Lou Benji looked at Shishi with some surprise. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he nodded and said, that's right. Shishi, you are very well informed. Indeed, this time, because the lovely children are going to visit, the factory manager is worried that there won't be any good products for you to see. Therefore, our publishing house and the factory jointly set up a very interesting small laboratory. We have specially made some very magical toys for you. They are really magical, as if they are controlled by magic. I guarantee that when you see them, you will feel that it is as wonderful as watching a movie. Lou Benji's last introduction was like a wizard's bewitchment, which immediately caught the children's appetite. Wow, there's magic. Hearing Shishi's translation, Lu Weisha excitedly jumped up and down. She pulled Shishi's hand and said in surprise, I want to see it, Shishi. It must be wonderful. It's not magic, it's just like magic. Shishi translated it methodically. She giggled and said, but I also want to see it. Chapter 1149. Indeed, it was just a small factory, so there was nothing worth visiting. Lou Benji and his staff could imagine the creative editors of the publishing house and the craftsmen of the factory working together to build a toy laboratory based on science. They wanted to use the magical phenomena of science to create special toys for the children. Yang Yi was very supportive of this idea. Under Lou Benji's lead, the children and their parents arrived at the simple and crude laboratory. When they entered the lab, Cece and her friends were actually a bit disappointed. After all, there were no fancy dolls on the shelves in this lab, nor were there any big round dolls that were tightly packed together. There were also no magical effects such as lightning, thunder, and frost that they had imagined. There were only some tables that were neatly arranged like the ones in the workshop in front of them, and some laboratory utensils on them. They were not surprised at all. Lou Benji did not know that the children were thinking about his magic. He turned around and asked enthusiastically, which child has ever played with a small racing car that can run with a battery? However, when the children heard his question, they were all stunned and looked up at him in confusion. After all, they were all girls. Even Nan Xiaoyu had never played with racing cars before. His family had very few toys, and he had been reciting poems for fun since he was young. However, Shishi reacted before the awkward silence. She happily raised her little arms as if she was worried that someone would steal the car from her. She hurriedly replied, Uncle Lu, I know. My brother has a small racing car like this. I have played with it before. Tong Tong, who was betrayed by his sister, did not react at all. He was lying on his father's shoulder and squinting his eyes sleepily. His listless expression showed that he had seen and played so much that he was tired after being busy the whole morning. I'm so sleepy. Let's sleep for a while. Sister, don't disturb me. Lu Benji snapped his fingers and smiled. Then do you know how our little racing car runs? She could not answer this time. The little girl was a little embarrassed as she twisted her little butt and said, Hee, I don't know either. It didn't matter. Soon Lu Benji called the children over to a large wooden basin. A simple wooden boat was placed on top of the water. Of course, the simple here referred to its simple structure. The skillful carpenters had carved this small wooden boat into the feeling of a dragon boat. Even the small embossments on the side of the boat were very delicate. Look, this small wooden boat is made from the engine of our toy racing car. The one connected to the propeller in the middle is our engine. Lu Benji took out the palm-sized wooden boat and introduced it to the little guys. In a while we'll invite a child to come and install a battery here, okay? Nan Xiaoyu was chosen as the first kid to eat crabs. Who asked him to be the only little boy? But Nan Xiaoyu was a little scared. He held the battery and showed an eager expression for a while, then nervously retracted his hand. He looked at Lu Benji worriedly and said, Uncle Lu, I'm scared. Don't be afraid. Its propeller is at both ends. You install the battery here. What's there to be afraid of? Lu Benji said with a smile. Although he was scared, Nan Xiaoyu still mustered up his courage and put the battery on. The moment the second battery was installed, the small engine began to hum, giving Nan Xiaoyu a fright. He quickly retracted his hand. But the other children cheered in surprise because the engine drove the propeller at both ends and spun like a big windmill. She looked at Nan Xiaoyu with envy. She also wanted to be selected for the experiment. As a participant and as a spectator, the experience would be very different, right? Then, the small boat on the water, relying on the engine to drive the propeller to sail quickly. This made the little guys cheer for a while. But this was only an appetizer. It was not a magical toy at all. Lu Benji only used this as an introduction. He took the children to the table in the laboratory and let them sit on the high stools so that they could easily watch the experiment on the table. When I went out this morning, your aunt prepared a boiled egg for me. She said that if you were hungry, you could peel it and eat it. Lu Benji conjured an egg like a magic trick. He smiled and said to the little guys, But I suddenly had a magical idea. Can I hold the egg and spin it? Spin it? She and the other children looked at Uncle Lu in confusion. They did not understand what he meant. So Lu Benji took the egg and spun it on the table like a top. In the end, it still could not stand up. Soon it lay down again and spun irregularly. Come try it. See if you can make it spin in this upright position. Lu Benji smiled and handed the egg to the children so that they could play with it. When it was Shishi's turn, the little girl also pinched the small head of the egg with interest. She had seen her friends spin it just now. None of them succeeded. In order to be able to stand up and show her friends how amazing she was, the little girl held back her strength and spun the egg very hard. This time, it would definitely stand up. Shishi watched with confidence. However, she used too much strength. Not only did the egg not spin, but it also flew out like a bottle knocked over by a bowling ball. Aya! Shishi covered her mouth with her two little hands and exclaimed. The egg flew past Lan Xian, who was caught off guard and rolled down. With a paw sound, it shattered on the ground. Shishi was scared out of her wits. She felt that she had done something terrible. She had broken the egg that Aunt Lu had cooked for Uncle Lu. She blamed herself in her heart and turned to look at her father in a fluster. There was no need to mention how helpless her pitiful little eyes were. However, this time, her father did not need to save her. Lan Xian reacted. She turned around and jumped down from the stool to pick up the egg. She took a few glances at it, then patted the broken egg shell and blew off the dust. She handed it over and said to Lu Benji happily, Uncle Lu, don't worry. It's still edible. It's just that the shell is broken. When Shishi heard that, she turned her head and looked over anxiously. Indeed, a hard-boiled egg was a lot harder. After falling off the table, Only the shell was cracked and a little flattened. However, the eggshell was still wrapped around the egg, so it didn't crack completely. Furthermore, it had been appraised by Lon Xian, so there was definitely no problem. Even if there was a problem, Lu Benji would not be calculative with the children. Moreover, the story behind this egg was made up by him. Haha, it's okay, it's okay. It's just an egg. Let's put it aside. Lu Benji said with a smile. He put the egg back into the plastic bag and continued to put it in his pocket. Then he moved over a small device made of polished wood on the table. Below was a box. On the outside there were switches, knobs, indicator lights, and so on. On the top was a round plate with beautiful wood grains printed on it. It was also extremely beautiful. Seeing that she was not blamed, she calmed down a little. She could not help but ask softly, "What is this?" Chapter 1150. This is called the Nicholas Egg Erector. After hearing Cece's whisper, Lu Benji turned to look at her with a smile and said, "Didn't we say that we couldn't make the egg stand up just now? But this can help us make the egg stand up and spin." She hadn't gotten over the awkwardness just now. She had accidentally sent the egg that Aunt Lu had cooked for Uncle Lu flying and breaking. Feeling guilty and embarrassed, she hurriedly avoided Uncle Lu's gaze and fixed her eyes on the strange box. The Nicholas Egg Erector that Lu Benji was talking about was actually a special name in this world. In Yang Yi's previous life, this thing was called Tesla's Columbus egg. Of course, Yang Yi hadn't learned about this in his previous life, but now he was also watching with great interest. Not to mention Yang Yi, the other parents were also craning their necks curiously. If they hadn't been a little reserved, they probably would have mixed in with the children and watched. At this time, Lon Xian, who had been looking at the broken egg, came back to her senses and asked curiously, "But the egg is already broken. How can it spin?" "That's a good question." Lu Benji conjured an egg-shaped copper block out of nowhere like a magic trick, and showed it to the children with a smile. "This machine doesn't use our ordinary eggs, but the eggs made of copper that you see in my hand." Of course, Lu Benji demonstrated to the children again. On an ordinary table, the copper egg still couldn't spin and stand up. Next, it's time to witness a miracle. Children, watch carefully. Don't blink. Lu Benji deliberately bluffed. The atmosphere seemed to be tense. The 8 children all stared at the wooden box, the wooden plate, and the copper egg in Uncle Lu's hand. They didn't even dare to breathe. She was the same. When she heard that she was about to witness a miracle, her big bright eyes were filled with excitement. Uncle Lu casually placed the copper egg on the wooden plate and flipped the switch below. The motor below began to hum. However, at this time the wooden plate didn't move. It didn't spin as fast as the propeller. Next, the children saw Uncle Lu casually spin the copper egg, and it began to spin. But that didn't seem right. The outspoken Chen Shiyun immediately raised her hand and asked in confusion, "Uncle Lu, that's not right. The egg hasn't even stood up yet." "That's right, I can do that too." The girls beside her all started talking at once. But at this moment, Lu Weisha exclaimed softly, drawing the attention of the children. Because while they were talking, the spinning copper egg actually stood up on its own. Amazing! She's already big eyes widened in surprise. She couldn't help but turn her head and look at her father in surprise, as though she wanted to share her feelings of disbelief with him. The principle of this egg-erecting device wasn't complicated. It used a rotating magnetic field to make the egg spin. Then it relied on the spinning effect to make the egg find the most suitable spinning position. Because the egg was oval-shaped, only when it stood up and rotated with its long axis as the center would it be stable. However, this was still a physical principle that many of the children hadn't learned before. Lu Benji demonstrated it again, and began to explain it to the children. The children listened in confusion. They understood a little, but they didn't quite understand. Each of them opened their small mouths and looked at him in confusion. Even the smart she didn't seem to understand. Seeing this, Yang Yi smiled and pointed at the wooden box behind him. He said to the children, "Uncle Lu means that this box of ours uses a more complicated machine to imitate a force that we can't see. It's called magnetic force. It helps us hold this copper egg as if we're holding it with our hands. This way, it can stand up and spin. So that's how it is. Although there were a few slow to react and tilted their heads in confusion, Shishi, Yang Luoqi, Yu Xiaowei, and the other girls understood. Shishi was still in her seat. She giggled, shook her little butt, and said, That's too amazing. We can't see it. Lu Xiaoyu rubbed Shishi's arm and said innocently, I know, that must be magic. At this time, Lu Benji called the children to another lower table. This way, everyone could gather together and observe without sitting down. It was convenient for them to move around. That was just a small magic spell. Next, we're going to witness an even more amazing magic spell. A magic spell that you can't even think of. Lu Benji said mysteriously. There's more magic to watch. Lan Xian and Chen Shiyan cheered happily. The other girls also laughed excitedly. Nan Zhaoyu also jumped with joy. Lu Benji carried over a very smooth round cushion. It was made of wood and was very heavy. No one knew what was inside. He then took out a small spinning top. It looked a bit like the one that was spinning in the Inception space. However, it wasn't made into a hole. The yellow frame and the bronze vertebral body were exquisite and cute. In the eyes of the children, it was as if it was some magical little toy that attracted their attention. Which child has played with this spinning top before? Lu Benji asked. Instantly, a few children, including Shishi, raised their hands excitedly. However, Shishi was a little embarrassed. She raised her hand and hesitated whether she should put it down. How many children haven't played with it before? Which child is willing to come up and show us how this spinning top is done? Lu Benji asked with a smile. At this time, Shishi shyly withdrew her hand. She was still thinking about her mistake. It wouldn't be good if she messed it up again. Lu Benji originally wanted to call her, but Shishi withdrew her hand. Lu Benji didn't want to make this privilege too obvious, so he called the more enthusiastic Chen Shiyan. There was nothing much to say about spinning a spinning top. The technique was similar to spinning an egg. But then Lu Benji asked Chen Shiyan to do a demonstration. Shishi, who had been watching just now, was envious. Lu Benji asked Chen Shiyan to spin the spinning top on a small cover. Then Lu Benji gently lifted the small cover. He didn't lift it too high, only a centimeter or two. At this time, the spinning top was still spinning on the cover. Shishi was surprised to see Uncle Lu gently lift his hand. The cover was taken away, but the spinning top was suspended in the air and kept spinning. Magic! Lu Xiaoyu exclaimed. That's right. This is the magnetic magic that we created using the same magnetic force. Look, there's actually no support below us. Lu Benji was still smiling. He took a glass cup and put the spinning top in horizontally. Then he took it away. The spinning top seemed to be unaffected at all. It continued to float in the air and spin slightly. Amazing. Shishi was envious. The little girl was a little regretful. Why didn't she try it bravely? It would have been great if she could have tried it too. It wasn't fun just to watch. If she had held the spinning top and spun it, she could have participated in this magic. How great would that have been? She had missed Uncle Lu's magic. Thinking of this, Shishi sullenly pouted because of regret. Although she didn't say anything, she took a step back and snuggled up to her father sadly. She even hugged her father's empty hand and started counting her father's fingers unhappily. What was the principle of magic? Shishi didn't really care. She couldn't even listen to Uncle Lu's endless explanation. She just stared at the spinning top eagerly. Do you want to play too? Yang Yi asked with a smile. He could roughly guess what his daughter was thinking. Shishi pursed her lips, looked back at her father, and nodded shyly. She was afraid that her father would laugh at her for breaking the egg. So she lowered her head and shook her little, but to show her inner desire. Yang Yi gently patted the little girl's head and said with a smile, Wait a minute. Let Uncle Lu finish. Yang Yi didn't go back on his words. After Lu Benji finished, he asked him to stop the spinning top and let each child try it. Only by trying it with your own hands can you have a deeper understanding. Shishi saw that Uncle Lu agreed, and a surprised smile appeared on her little face again. Waiting in line was nothing. When it was her turn, Shishi happily pulled her father's hand and said with reliance, Papa, I'll play with you, okay? The little girl was worried that she would make a mistake. She only had confidence when her father was with her. Chapter 1151. This visit to the doll factory was full of joy and laughter for every child, including Shishi. The little girl had seen the production process of those cute dolls owned by her family, the automatic packaging line, and many magical scientific toys. Not only that, but when they finally left, every child, including Shishi, could pick a doll they liked as a souvenir to take home. Moreover, the amiable and lovely Uncle Lu gave each of them a paper box, which was said to contain a paper tree that could grow flowers. This small gift was for the children to explore with their parents when they went home. Anyway, when they went back, every child's eyes were shining with satisfaction. On the minibus they chattered and talked. After playing for half a day, they didn't seem to feel tired at all. The adults had been walking with them for a long time, so they were a little tired. They sat in the minibus, and the driver hired by Yang Yi drove them back. They couldn't help but close their eyes and rest in the car. But the children were still chatting happily. Some sat in their own seats and chatted with their companions next to them, while others twisted their necks and looked around, trying to find their companions to talk to. Lu Weisha was the same. Although she couldn't understand the language, and it was slower for her to translate to Shishi or Uncle Yang, it didn't prevent her from having fun. Now Lu Weisha was happily holding the doll she had chosen from the Ice Age Mammoth Peach. She said to Shishi, "Shishi, I like this factory so much. It would be great if I could come here to play every day." The doll Shishi had chosen was also a character from the Ice Age. However, she had chosen a Tyrannosaurus Rex. To be exact, it was one of the kind and cute Tyrannosaurus Rex babies raised by Sid. Its big, curious eyes and awkward, honest smile made it lose the fierce and cruel feeling that a Tyrannosaurus Rex should have. It was cute, very cute. Of course, the main reason Shishi had chosen it was because she didn't have such a doll at home. "Yeah, I want to come and play too." Shishi's voice was soft. She smiled sweetly at Lu Weisha and said, But I need to earn a lot of gold coins so that I can go to your house to play and buy a lot of soft toys." "Hey, Shishi. How did you know that we also have dolls at home? You don't have to buy anything. You can come to my house and play. I'll ask my father to give you a lot of interesting dolls. You can also take mine if you like," Lu Weisha said generously. She looked at Shishi expectantly. Obviously, Lu Weisha also hoped that Shishi would come to her house to play. Lu Weisha, you misunderstood. When I told you that I want to buy dolls, I'm talking about those big, beautiful dolls from the factories. Let me tell you, Lu Weisha, my father is also willing to buy me dolls, but I have to help him and Mom with the housework," Shishi quickly explained. Shishi spoke Swedish very fluently. Of course, sometimes she still encountered some words that she didn't know. At this time, she tried her best to dance and express with her body language. Lu Weisha listened to her in confusion, and the two chatted happily. After a long talk, Shishi suddenly remembered that Lu Weisha seemed to have said that there were dolls in their hometown. She quickly stopped and asked curiously, "Lu Weisha, what are the dolls in your house like?" On the other side of Jiang City, Guazi's mother was watering the flowers in the courtyard of the municipal government, because she had nothing to do on a weekend afternoon. She didn't expect to bump into a woman whom she had been trying to avoid for the past few days. "Huijian, watering the flowers? Well, the weather is good today, and the sun is shining brightly." The woman with a vegetable basket waved her hand with a smile across the road of the family compound opposite. Her fat body squeezed in front of the parked car. Her movement made it clear that she wanted to chat with Tan Huijian. Of course, this was not particularly unexpected. They all lived in the same family compound, so how could they not greet each other? Especially for older women like her. When they met, how could they not get together and chat for a while if there was anything new? However, Tan Huijian was not very willing to meet her recently, so when she heard her voice, Tan Huijian felt that trouble was coming again. "Sister Ku." Tan Huijian raised her head and smiled helplessly. "Yes, the weather is good today. Did you just come back from grocery shopping?" The sister Ku that Tan Huijian called was full name Ku Xiuyuan. Before she retired, she was a small leader in the Civil Affairs Bureau of Jiang City's Wuhu district. Of course, her own identity was not much to talk about. The powerful one was her brother, who was currently the head of Jiangnan Province's finance department. Their relationship was very strong. However, Ku Xiuyuan did not put on airs. Usually, she would chat and laugh with Tan Huizhen and the other middle-aged women in the family compound. She was warm and cheerful, and she was very popular. Originally, Tan Huizhen and Ku Xiuyuan's relationship was not bad. However, recently, Ku Xiuyuan's occupational disease was acting up again. She kept talking about introducing girls to Guizi. This was nothing. Tan Huizhen used to joke about finding a girlfriend for Guizi. The girl that Ku Xiuyuan introduced was called Xiaoliang. Her background was not bad, and her parents were provincial leaders. She was not as good as Guo Zhengyan. Tan Huizhen had seen her photo before. She was a delicate and pretty girl. According to these conditions, Tan Huizhen was quite satisfied. However, the problem was that Xiaoliang majored in violin. Although she got into Jiang City's Media University through connections, Tan Huizhen was not satisfied with her major. Going to a university to study violin? Was this called going to a university? Later, Ku Xiuyuan mentioned that Xiaoliang also wanted to be a celebrity. She loved to sing and dance since she was young, and she had participated in many programs. She even joked with Tan Huizhen that the girl admired Xiaogua. If it was successful, the two of them could develop together in the entertainment industry and support each other. It would be a good story. Hearing Ku Xiuyuan's words, Tan Huizhen was even more unhappy. Guizi liked to act. Guo Zhengyan and Tan Huizhen were very opposed to his decision to enter the entertainment industry. Although they had gradually acknowledged Guizi's choice and applauded his achievements, they did not want to have another celebrity as their daughter-in-law. Don't forget, Tan Huizhen had expressed her opinion during Murphy's concert. In her eyes, women in this line of work were more or less unreliable. She might be a ticking time bomb for the family. Moreover, Tan Huizhen felt that it was inappropriate for the girl to be so proactive. She was secretly on her guard. Of course, although Tan Huizhen had already rejected the suggestion in her heart, she would not reject it directly. After all, it was easier to hurt their relationship. This hurt their relationship was not referring to Ku Xiuyuan. Tan Huizhen was worried that Xiaoliang's family would think that she was looking down on Guo Zhengyan and make enemies for Guo Zhengyan in the province. Therefore, Tan Huizhen played Tai Chi with Ku Xiuyuan and delayed the matter. She might as well avoid Ku Xiuyuan for the next few days. Unexpectedly, Sister Ku came back from grocery shopping and saw her watering the plants. The two of them chatted for a while. Sure enough, Ku Xiuyuan talked about Guizi again. However, to Tan Huizhen's surprise, Ku Xiuyuan asked cautiously, "Huizhen, we have known each other for so long. I have a question that I want to ask you. I hope you don't mind." Sister Ku, ask away. "What's the matter?" Tan Huizhen said with a smile. "To be honest, I think that Xiaogua and Xiaoliang will be a couple. They are schoolmates and have common topics to talk about. But Xiaogua hasn't expressed his opinion recently. Could it be that he already has a girlfriend?" Ku Xiuyuan asked. "Girlfriend?" This. Tan Huizhen hesitated. She was still hesitating if she should use this as an excuse. But at this moment, Ku Xiuyuan sighed and said, "Huizhen, I'm close to you. To tell you the truth, I didn't want to ask you this question. It was Xiaoliang who asked me to. She said she saw a photo of Xiaogua being intimate with another girl from a classmate's place." Chapter 1152. There was nothing bad about Ku Xiuyuan. She had been in the Civil Affairs Bureau for a long time, and she was generous and enthusiastic. She was very attentive to matchmaking. What made Tan Huizhen more unhappy was actually Xiaoliang's side. Tan Huizhen didn't know if it was because Xiaoliang's family wanted to get close to Guo Zhengyan and establish a good relationship with him, or if it was because Xiaoliang saw that Guizi was so popular in the entertainment industry and had some schemes in his heart. Anyway, the other party was the one who asked Sister Ku to be a matchmaker. Guizi didn't have any intentions, but the other party took it seriously. Now that they saw some photos, they anxiously asked Ku Xiuyuan to get to the bottom of it. Naturally, Tan Huizhen was a little unhappy when she heard this. "Since when did you have the right to ask about my son's matters?" However, Tan Huizhen didn't say these words out loud. She still chuckled and said, Sister Ko, I haven't heard of this matter. Could it be that this rascal secretly had a girlfriend outside? I'll have to ask him later. Speaking of this, Tan Huijin became curious again and couldn't help but ask, Sister Ko, you're talking about that photo. Do you have it? Let me take a look and see what's going on. Ku Xiuyuan looked around and saw that no one was peeking at them. Then she took out a phone with a big screen and said enthusiastically to Tan Huijin, Come Huijin, let me show you. Xiaoliang sent it to me. I don't know if it's true or not. What I mean is, you don't have to make things difficult for the child. This kind of thing mainly depends on the child's opinion. If the child's heart belongs to someone else, it doesn't matter. I'll talk to Xiaoliang. Even if they can't be boyfriend and girlfriend, they can still be ordinary friends. Tan Huijin didn't say anything. After she saw the photo, her smile stiffened. Wasn't the girl with delicate features holding hands with Guozi, Ding Xiang, whom she was very familiar with? Speaking of which, this girl is quite pretty. It's just that her skin isn't as white as Xiaoliang's. Ku Xiuyuan pulled the phone away, squinted for a while, and chattered to Tan Huijin. Tan Huijin was no longer interested in chatting. She exchanged a few pleasantries, and after bidding farewell to Ku Xiuyuan, she returned to the house with a frown and some confusion. There was nothing wrong with the photo. Guozi and Ding Xiang were walking hand in hand. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that there was something fishy going on. Although Yang Huan was walking beside them, she did not stand with them. She was being pestered by two children to watch something. Their surroundings looked like a movie theater. So they went to watch a movie? Tan Huijin remembered what had happened last week. Guozi had also said that he wanted to watch a movie, and that it was to watch Yang Yi's animated film. She remembered this very clearly. Guozian had wanted to go with them, but Guozi had not agreed. Because of this, Guozian had been depressed for a long time. Even though Guozi had bought her another movie ticket, she was still unwilling. So, Guozi had not agreed to watch a movie with his sister because he wanted to watch it with Ding Xiang. No wonder his attitude was so firm. Tan Huijin didn't know that this was not the reason at all. If it was just for Ding Xiang, Guozian would have been fine. After all, she already knew about it. Guozi just didn't want to bring a big friend because it was a party organized by Yang Yi, and there were many children and their parents present. He was worried that it would cause trouble for Yang Yi. But why was it Ding Xiang? Tan Huijin frowned. She didn't know what she was thinking. She sat on the sofa for a long time until Guo Zhengyan came back for dinner. Because it was the weekend, Guozian hadn't returned to school yet. While she was eating, she excitedly talked about the strange things she had encountered today. Tan Huijin didn't express her thoughts. Instead, she waited for Guozian to finish before she asked casually, Yin Yin, where is your brother now? Is he filming a movie or recording a show? Guozi didn't live at home now, and he often flew around. Tan Huijin really didn't know about Guozi's schedule. On the contrary, Guozi, who was closer to Guozian, and was keen on understanding the gossip of the entertainment industry, knew more. Guozian bit a vegetable in her mouth and smiled vaguely. He's eating dirt in some village in Guangdong province. What do you mean? Tan Huijin asked, puzzled. He's really eating dirt. Guozian wiped her oily mouth and said seriously, Isn't he the spokesperson of the Sahara Rural Development Foundation? Originally, he was just a spokesperson. He had nothing to do with going to the countryside, but he had to dive in and follow the large group to teach the farmers. Teach the farmers? Guo Zhengyan heard these keywords and became a little interested. He looked at her sternly and asked in a loud voice, The Sahara Rural Development Foundation you mentioned, is it a foundation based on the Sahara Online Mall? Guozian was honest when facing her father. She didn't dare to be cheeky and replied in a low voice, Isn't it? But this is mainly funded by Brother Yang, and several other bosses in the Sahara have contributed some money. By the way, Guozi is the spokesperson, and Sister Ding Xiang was also arranged by Brother Yang to be in charge of this foundation. Guozian just wanted to take the opportunity to leave a good impression on Ding Xiang in front of her parents, but she didn't know that when she heard Ding Xiang's name, Tan Huijin's eyebrows trembled slightly. She knew there was something going on here. But before Tan Huijin had time to ask, Guo Zhengyan, who was interested, didn't give her a chance to speak. He continued, this rural fund, Zi told me before, is mainly used to promote the Sahara Taobao Mall. Guo Zhengyan said with a sigh, in the past, I didn't think that there was anything good about this kind of illusory business on the internet. Now that I've seen the development of the Sahara Taobao Mall, some people have talked to me about it. It turns out that I was wrong. It was mainly because in the past few months, those merchants in Guangdong province had sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. They had set up shops on Taobao Mall, and Taobao Mall was willing to spend a lot of money to advertise and organize promotional activities. The total sales volume and turnover could be said to be in the form of an exponential increase, which attracted the attention of the whole country. The Sahara Taobao Mall is very good, Guo Ziyan said with a smile. Mom, didn't you see that I rarely go shopping now? Because there are too many clothes to choose from on the internet. Originally, the Sahara Taobao Mall wasn't good enough, but now, many people can set up shops on Taobao Mall, and there are more beautiful clothes. Also, you can add a yuan for a refund of worry-free insurance. If you don't like it after you buy it, you can ask the logistics department to return it to you for free. Tan Huizhen chuckled and didn't respond. Her mind was still thinking about Guo Ziyi and Ding Xiang. What kind of work does Ziyi do in the countryside? Guo Zhengyan asked. He didn't know whether he was concerned about his son, or about the Sahara Taobao Mall and the rural fund. Guo Ziyan usually gossiped a lot, so at this time, she could speak frankly. Their fund, to put it bluntly, is to teach the farmers how to set up shops on Taobao Mall, and how to set up the logistics receiving point of the Sahara Express. After teaching those farmers, they can set up shops on the internet and sell their products without leaving their homes. At this time, Tan Huizhen came back to her senses and asked in confusion, how do you know so much? It's all written in the newspaper. The China Youth Daily has reported it several times, but it's about Sister Ding Xiang and the college volunteers, Guo Ziyan said with a smile. This matter is still in Sister Ding Xiang's charge. My brother is just an assistant, but they have done a lot of good things. They taught those farmers for free and helped them bypass the distributors. I don't know much about it, but anyway, the fruits can be sold to faraway places on the internet and directly to customers, so the farmers can earn a lot of money. The farmers are very grateful to them. Tan Huizhen understood. It wasn't that Ding Xiang followed her son to the countryside, but that Ding Xiang was struggling in the countryside, and Guo Ziyi accompanied her eagerly. Thinking of this, Tan Huizhen felt a little awkward. Without the distributors, there are still many links in the wholesale market. Their goods can be sold directly to individual customers, which indeed increases the income of the farmers. It also speeds up the circulation of goods, so that their agricultural products won't rot in the field and can't be sold. Guo Zhengyan reorganized Guo Ziyan's words, and said with a little seriousness. He seemed to have understood a lot. It was estimated that the merchants in Jiangqing were a little envious when they saw the prosperity of Guangdong province, so some people came to Guo Zhengyan to find a channel to join the Taobao Mall. The operation mode of this Taobao Mall entered the vision of Guo Zhengyan, the big boss. However, Guo Zhengyan also understood what Guo Ziyi and Ding Xiang were doing for the first time. He showed a thoughtful expression, paused and said, I misjudged Ding Xiang. I didn't expect her to be able to do such a big thing that Yang Yi gave her. I also read the report in the China Youth Daily. For the China Youth Daily to report on it as a special topic, her achievements are really amazing. Hearing Guo Zhengyan's praise of Ding Xiang, Tan Huizhen was not only a little surprised, but also looked over in surprise. You know, Guo Zhengyan rarely praised people. She didn't know that Guo Zhengyan was interested in this Sahara Rural Development Charity Foundation, and even had the intention to discuss a cooperation with Yang Yi. However, Guo Zhengyan didn't throw out his own olive branch so easily. He deliberated and said to Guo Ziyan, You go back and ask Yi when he will come back to Jiangqing. It would be better if Ding Xiang was also there. It would be best to ask Ding Xiang to come home. I want to know some information from her. Tan Huizhen's expression hesitated. Chapter 1153. Let's not talk about Mama Guo's situation for now. In the evening after the children went home, the Yang family's villa finally had some peace and quiet. There was still an excited smile on Cece's little face. She hopped on her front foot, and then on her heels, following behind her father, and happily sharing her feelings today with her father. Yang Yi passed by her, and took a plate from the side hall. He rubbed the little girl's head and asked with a smile, "Didn't you have enough fun today?" "I had a lot of fun." She looked up at her father's hand, smiled sweetly and said, "I didn't expect to see so many fun things." "Then we should care about others when we have fun. You can't only care about your own happiness. It's wrong." Yang Yi bent down, put one hand on Xishi's shoulder and said gently, "Look at your mother. She's tired out playing with you today." Xishi didn't know how to react to her father's sudden change of topic. She blinked her beautiful big eyes and looked at her father in a daze. "Mom is back now. She's so tired and has already gone upstairs to sleep. Since we've already had so much fun today, shouldn't we go upstairs and show some concern for her?" Yang Yi said as he circled back and asked Cici. It was the first time that Cici had thought of this. She calmed down from her happy state. The little girl could only nod her little head in confusion. Then she hugged her father's arm with her two little hands, gently pouted her little mouth and asked, "Papa, what should I do? Mama, is Mama sick?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "Mom isn't sick. She's just tired from walking today. Her feet are a little sore and her body is a little tired. She's just like you who just came back from a spring outing and want to sleep." Of course, he didn't mean to make things difficult for Cici. He seriously guided the little girl and taught her how to care for her mother. "Go up and see if your mother is asleep. She shouldn't be asleep yet. You can ask her how you are now. Do you want some water? Shall I pour you a cup of hot water?" Yang Yi paused. He felt that the last sentence was a little redundant, so he washed a glass and handed it to Xishi. He said, "Give your mother a cup of warm water and bring it up directly." Why did Yang Yi ask Xishi to get the water herself? Wasn't he afraid that Xishi would get scalded? The water dispenser in Yang Yi's house was relatively high-end. Usually, customers could only choose between cold water and warm water. As for the hot water option, it was locked and could only be used by Yang Yi or Murphy with their fingerprints. This way, Xishi or Tong Tong could avoid the risk of being scalded by accident. Usually when she drank water, Xishi would take the cup herself. She didn't have the bad habit of opening her mouth and stretching out her hands. "Go ahead. Mom also needs to be cared for. You don't have to do too much. A simple greeting and a cup of warm water will make her very happy." Yang Yi said to Xishi with a smile. At this moment, Xishi finally came back to her senses. She also played along. She recovered her smiling eyes and nodded actively. She said sweetly, "Hee hee, Papa, I also want Mom to be happy." The little girl was energized. She grabbed the glass and ran out energetically. Yang Yi didn't follow his daughter to see her performance. He just smiled and turned back to the kitchen. How could she let her father down? The little girl filled a cup with warm water, carefully held it with both hands, and slowly walked upstairs. How slow was she? Tong Tong chuckled and chased Bao Bao down the stairs. When he saw his sister, he curiously followed her. He strenuously climbed up step by step, but it didn't take long for him to catch up with his sister. Tong Tong squeezed himself next to Xishi. He even stuck his little head out and looked up at his sister with a silly smile. He was as clingy as Bao Bao. However, he didn't know that his squeezing made Xishi lose her balance. Her hand trembled, and some of the water in the cup spilled onto Xishi's hand. Some spilled onto Xishi's clothes, causing a small wet patch. Xishi anxiously shouted, "Aya, brother, don't touch me. You'll make me fall." Tong Tong was stunned for a moment. He looked up at his sister. Sister is so fierce. But why is she angry? However, little Hua Chen had a persevering spirit. He waited for his sister to walk down 2 steps before he came back to his senses. He felt that it might have just been an illusion, and his little mouth opened again. He giggled and hummed as he followed after his sister. This time, the little fellow didn't touch his sister. After some of the water spilled, Xishi held the cup more firmly and quickened her pace. When they reached the 2nd floor, Xishi carefully held the cup with both hands. She couldn't open the door. What should I do? Actually, she could open the door with one hand and open it with the other. However, Xishi turned around and saw Tong Tong following behind her. An idea popped into her head. Wouldn't it be a waste if she didn't use her brother when she had one? Soon, under his sister's instructions, little Swanee brought over a small stool from his sister's room and stepped on it. He worked diligently with his chubby little hands and helped his sister open the door to his mother's room. Murphy was resting on her bed with her eyes closed. However, she was too tired and didn't want to sleep. After all, she still had to eat dinner later. When Murphy heard the commotion at the door and heard Shishi and Tong Tong's cheers, she couldn't help but sit up in surprise. She turned her head and looked over. Cece had a happy smile on her face as she carefully protected the glass cup in her hand as she walked in. Little Momo also walked down from the small stool and eagerly followed behind her sister. Murphy was stunned by this scene. Although Shishi hadn't said anything, Murphy knew what was going on. Suddenly, an indescribable feeling of gratitude spread in her heart. Mom. Hey, you didn't sleep? Cece's crisp and pleasant voice sounded, making Mo Fei come back to her senses. The little girl blinked her clear and bright big eyes and said happily, Papa said that I should come to ask Mama and care about Mama. Are you feeling better? Murphy lifted the blanket and got down from her bed. She squatted on the floor barefooted and hugged Shishi's soft waist. She smiled emotionally and said, Mom is fine. I was just a little tired earlier. Now that I've rested, I feel much better. Okay. Shishi nodded happily when she heard this. However, she remembered the cup in her hands and hurriedly handed it over carefully. She said sweetly, Mom, drink some water. This is boiled water. It's warm and delicious. Murphy took the cup and drank a big mouthful. She felt that the cup of water had an indescribable sweetness. She put the cup to the side and hugged Shishi. She said emotionally, Thank you, Shishi. Did Papa teach you this? But no matter what, you're too sensible. Mom is very touched. It was Papa who taught me. Mom, Papa told me that I also need to know how to care for others. Shishi was very honest and explained without any greed. You've grown up. Mom is very happy. Murphy hugged her daughter and kissed her on the cheek with a smile. Tong Tong, who was watching from the side, was envious. He anxiously shook his two little hands and pouted his pink little mouth. He called out, Mom, hug. Okay, Tong Tong, hug too. Murphy smiled. She freed her left arm and carried Tong Tong over. She hugged both children and kissed them on the left and right, not favoring one and discriminating against the other. Hee hee. Shishi shrunk her little head and laughed for a while. However, she was still in the mood to talk because the process of showing concern for her mother was very tortuous. Mom, let me tell you. The little girl giggled and placed her two little hands on her mother's shoulders. She said in a clear voice, When I came up just now, the water was full. But little brother touched me and spilled some water. Look, my clothes are still wet. Tong Tong seemed to understand that his sister was talking about his embarrassing incident. He raised his two little hands in embarrassment and covered his eyes. He burrowed into his mother's arms and shook his little butt. Sister is too naughty. You didn't have to fill it to the brim. If the water is too full, it will be difficult to hold it. Murphy laughed. How could she blame Tong Tong? Of course, Cece wouldn't complain. She was just narrating the story just now. Now the little girl was beaming with joy as she said, But little brother also helped me. Just now little brother even helped me open the door. He's so strong. Really? Then Tong Tong is also very powerful. Murphy smiled and teased the little guy who was pretending to be an ostrich. Chapter 1154. Yang Yi was making delicious food. Because the sun was blazing and the weather was hot, both the adults and children were a little hot when they walked in the factory and between the factories. Therefore, Yang Yi specially prepared a table of dishes for Murphy and the children to eat. The dish he was making now was called fresh vegetable painted white fruit shrimp. In terms of craftsmanship, there was not much to say about this dish. Most of the ingredients were cooked by boiling or blanching, and then some sauce was poured over it. However, this dish was very exquisite when it was placed on the plate. The outermost layer was a circle of shrimps, but the shrimps were also very particular. Originally, when the shrimps were blanched, a ginkgo was skewered in the middle with a toothpick. However, when it was placed on the plate, the toothpick was removed, and the shrimps were placed on a cylindrical cucumber slice with the ginkgo in between. It gave people the impression that the yellow ginkgo was embedded in the middle of the fresh shrimps, and underneath it was a green cucumber base. The color of the dish gave people a very delicate feeling. P.S. Older children can eat white fruit, but they must not eat too much of it. In fact, it is the same for adults. It is not good to eat too much white fruit, so in this dish there are only a few white fruits. It is okay to eat a small amount, after all, it is very nutritious. In addition, it is best not to give Tong Tong, a young child like him, to eat it. We will talk about this later, don't worry. The ingredients in the middle were more abundant. There were dark green broccoli, Cece's favorite lentils, red sliced carrots, white lilies and rich colors. Together with the crystal clear feeling after the sauce was drizzled over the dish. This dish gave people a kind of enjoyment like a piece of art. Of course, smelling the faint fragrance, the family members who were tired after a day's work would have a better appetite. The moment the sauce was poured over, Yang Yi smiled with satisfaction. He took a pair of chopsticks and picked up a piece of carrot to taste. Just as he was eating secretly, the children's voices came from outside. "Papa, we're here to see you." It was Shishi who opened the door. Before she came in, her bell-like laughter and voice could be heard. The little girl poked her head out and glanced at her father. Then she giggled and turned back to shout, "Papa is inside. Little brother, it's your turn." Yang Yi was surprised to see Xiao Pai's small stature come in through the sliding door of the kitchen. He was also holding a glass of water in his hand just like his sister. Of course, it was probably because they were worried that the Tong Tong cup would not be held properly, so the cup was replaced with a light paper cup. There was only a thin layer of water in the cup, and it was probably only enough for one mouthful. Even so, the way the Tong Tong was holding it was quite frightening. It was swaying as if it would flip over at any time when he wasn't paying attention. Fortunately, he was sent in safely. Hee papa. Little Momo followed suit and imitated his sister's behavior upstairs. He grinned and stuffed the cup into his father's outstretched hand. After passing the cup to his father, the little boy wiped his hands on his body and giggled. His round, black, and bright eyes looked at his father innocently as if he was waiting for something. "You're also pouring water for Papa like your sister? Thank you. Tong Tong is very sensible too." Yang Yi smiled and rubbed Tong Tong's head. At the same time, he looked at Murphy, who was following behind them. He knew that this was definitely Murphy's idea. Of course, he still had to drink water. Yang Yi opened the paper cup and drank the cold water in one gulp. But Xiao Ruo still looked at him with eager eyes, and even became a little anxious. This was not right. This was not how the script was written. Why was Papa just rubbing his head? Tong Tong grabbed his father's pants anxiously. He stood on his tiptoes and pouted. "Oh, where's the kiss?" There was no need to worry. He still had the warm-hearted Shishi behind him. The little girl hurriedly translated for her brother. "Papa, little brother said that you want to hug and kiss him. Because Mom already hugged and kissed me." Yang Yi laughed involuntarily. He bent down, picked up the little boy, and kissed his tender little face. At this moment, Tong Tong was satisfied and smiled happily again. However, he did not want to stay in his father's arms. After fulfilling his wish, the little boy twisted and wanted to get down. He turned around and slipped out again. Shishi looked back and reported to her father. "Papa, little brother went to play with Dodo." Wasn't that right? Tong Tong decided to share such an interesting thing with Sister Cat. "You go and play too." Murphy patted Shishi's back with a smile and said, "Papa is going to cook." Shishi also ran out happily, leaving only Yang Yi and Murphy in the kitchen. Yang Yi still had a dish to cook, but he was not in a hurry. After Shishi went out, he put his arm around Murphy's shoulders and gently massaged her. He said with a smile, "Why don't you sleep? You asked Mommy to bring me water. Didn't you say that you were tired when you came back just now?" "I was tired just now, but now I'm so happy that I don't feel tired anymore." Murphy smiled proudly. "Besides, isn't it good to let Mommy learn something good from me? Although he may not understand the meaning of this, he will understand it in the future." Yang Yi smiled and said, "There's no need to do it so early. If you let him observe, he will have an impression. There's no need to do so. I'm just worried that he will fall while holding the cup. Then tell me, was the cup of water sweet just now? Murphy didn't want to reason with Yang Yi. She turned around and faced Yang Yi. It was sweet, of course it was sweet. I put all the credit on you. Thank you for your concern, my wife. Yang Yi smiled, held Murphy's beautiful face, and was about to kiss it. But at this time, Murphy smiled slyly and dodged. Hee hee, I don't want you to kiss me. Your mouth stinks. Yang Yi was confused. He even covered his breath with his hand and sniffed. It doesn't stink. Murphy pursed her lips and held back her laughter. Your mouth doesn't stink, but there's a problem with the water you drank just now. Yang Yi widened his eyes and looked at Murphy in surprise. What problem? Think about it, with your son's head, can he reach the water dispenser? Mo Fei bit her lower lip and smiled charmingly and cunningly. In order to get you a glass of water, guess where he went to find it? No way. Then why did you let me drink it? Yang Yi was shocked. His mouth was so shocked that it turned into the shape of an egg. Murphy's words reminded him of a very popular video on the internet in his previous life. A little boy who was still wearing diapers was bringing water to his father who was playing games. In the end, his wife exposed the secret. It turned out that the little boy was holding the cup and scooping water from the toilet bowl. When he thought of this, Yang Yi immediately felt unwell. However, just when he was in despair, he saw a flaw on Mo Fei's face. She did not know how to act at all. She had a smug smile on her face. Yang Yi immediately figured out the crux of the matter. He laughed and pulled Murphy over. His big palm lightly slapped her perky butt and said unhappily, "You, how old are you now? Are you happy being naughty?" Murphy twisted in his arms and giggled. How did you find out? I don't believe that you didn't stop him when you saw him bringing me water from the toilet bowl. I guess it was Shishi who got him water from the water dispenser? You like to play pranks. Yang Yi laughed. Also, I kissed your son just now. If it was really toilet water, would you let me kiss Momo? Murphy laughed until tears almost flowed out. She used her small fist to hit Yang Yi's thick chest. I'm dying of laughter. Okay, I admit it. I was joking. Don't talk about toilet water anymore. It's almost time to eat. Now you want me to stop talking. Yang Yi purposely put on a fierce posture. It's too late. You didn't let me kiss you just now. Now I'm going to take it back 100 times. Don't, what if the wrapper tears? While begging for mercy, Mo Fei looked at Yang Yi with flirtatious eyes. That happy smile did not show any sign of admitting her mistake. Chapter 1155. July 13th was Shishi's birthday. After this day, Shishi would be 7 years old, and would soon be 8 years old. Of course, Cece wasn't like her mother, who rolled all over the floor and acted like a spoiled child. The little girl didn't have to worry about the passage of time. She simply thought about the birthday cake and the exquisite gifts from her parents on her birthday. Thus, she eagerly looked forward to her birthday. A few days before her birthday, the little girl began to hum a song impatiently and jump around at home. When she couldn't wait any longer, she even called Lu Weisha, who was traveling overseas, and repeatedly confirmed the date of her return with her friend. You must come back because my papa said that he bought me a big cake, she said to Lu Weisha happily. Let's eat the cake together, okay? Although Yang Yi promised to hold a small birthday party for Shishi, he only invited a few of her friends. Moreover, it was just a simple small activity at home. He did not intend to make a big fuss and wantonly hold a birthday party for Shishi. After all, his identity was different from before. Under the premise that the statistics were not complete, and his company had no intention of going public in the near future, his net worth had reached 10 billion yuan. Such an identity naturally attracted the covetous eyes of many people who had evil intentions. The media also used a few photos of Shishi secretly taken all day long, saying that the little girl was becoming more and more beautiful as she grew up. Yang Yi was famous for raising children. Through the reactions of some people in the entertainment circle who had come into contact with Shishi, Shishi's character was extremely good. Of course, the media would not say it directly, but they always liked to play with words. They vaguely said that based on Yang Yi's net worth, when Shishi grew up in the future, she would definitely be the most popular and beloved little princess in the whole of China. In fact, these did not need to be said when Shishi grew up. Below Yang Yi's micro-broadcasting, weren't there always people calling him father-in-law? If those fans were just joking, then those who had evil intentions were really up to no good. For Shishi's birthday this time, there were several groups of people, including some rich businessmen in Jiangcheng, who contacted Yang Yi through various methods. In a roundabout way, they expressed that they wanted to bring their children to Shishi's birthday party to give gifts to the little princess and congratulate her for growing up 1 year. Everyone knew what Sima Zhao's intentions were, and Yang Yi also knew these people's intentions. Of course, these kinds of social interactions were common in the circle of the rich. Those rich people's children's birthdays were extraordinarily grand, as if they were worried that others would not know that there was such a dote-on in their family's family. They could not wait to treat their children as exhibits, like walking on a catwalk, wearing an expensive and beautiful custom-made dress in a circle, under the attention of thousands of people's eyes. Yang did not have such a problem. Neither did he intend to integrate into the so-called rich circle, nor did he intend to raise his daughter into a soulless vase. He only hoped that she could be simple, like an ordinary child, growing up happily and innocently. How did ordinary children celebrate their birthdays? The simplest way was to prepare nothing. There were no gifts, birthday cakes, or anything like that. Only 2 eggs cooked by their mother in the morning. Of course, Shishi would definitely not agree to this. Moreover, there was no need to act so poor. If it was too deliberate, it would seem a little pretentious. Yang Yi preferred to celebrate Shishi's birthday with his family at home. He would prepare a medium-sized birthday cake and a birthday present for Shishi. Then, the family would gather together and sing a birthday song for Shishi. There was no need for outsiders to participate. The family of 4 would be warm and happy. However, there was a problem with this. After all, other children would invite Shishi over to play on their birthdays. For example, in May when it was Lu Xiaoyu's birthday, Shishi and Lan Xian also went over to eat cake. Now that it was Shishi's birthday, he could not possibly not invite Lu Xiaoyu over to eat cake, right? Yang Yi did not want Shishi to be isolated by her friends. Therefore, he relaxed the conditions and held a small party at home. He also let Shishi invite her best friends over to eat cake. As for other people who wanted to jump up and down, Yang Yi refused all of them. He also asked Lan's Hao Kai to help give the villa's security guards a strict order that day. No matter who wanted to find an excuse to sneak in, they would not be allowed to pass. It was worth mentioning that there were actually many people who sent birthday gifts to Shishi. At the gatehouse, the birthday gifts sent by the fans who signed for them almost filled the security guard's house. However, Shishi did not know about this at all. She still had a lot of gifts that had not been opened. She asked her father to send them to the Sahara Publishing House and distribute them to her uncles and aunts. However, it did not matter. Sometimes ignorance was a kind of happiness. Shishi did not know about the existence of these gifts, so naturally, she did not have the pain of making a choice. On this day, the little girl ran over mysteriously and climbed onto the sofa. She grabbed her father's shoulders with both hands and leaned close to her father's ear. She giggled and said, "Papa, I found a big secret." Without waiting for her father to ask about the secret, she could not wait to say, That is, I found that Mom seems to be preparing to sing for me." Yang Yi raised his eyebrows in surprise and asked with a smile, "How did you know?" He did secretly prepare a song for Shishi's birthday with Murphy, and had been secretly practicing these days. Of course, Murphy practiced more. After all, she was the lead singer. "Because I just went to find Mom and saw her singing on the 3rd floor. Shishi seemed to be afraid that others would know." She leaned close to her father's ear and whispered, "Then Mom said that I couldn't eavesdrop and that I could only listen in 2 days. The little girl's eyes sparkled with excitement. Obviously, she was very proud of her great discovery. "Mom must be singing for me, because it's my birthday in 2 days." That's not necessarily true. Mom may just be practicing her singing. She may not necessarily plan to sing on your birthday. Yang Yi smiled and reached out to pinch the little girl's delicate little nose. Oh no. You both sang last time. Shishi wriggled her little body in her father's arms, making her father laugh. Don't laugh. You have to sing. The competition in the movie market during the summer vacation was particularly fierce. In addition to the two excellent movies, Frozen and The Shawshank Redemption, some movie companies in this world also release commercial blockbusters one after another. Action blockbusters such as Assassination Crisis and Express Delivery were also crazily dominating the box office. They formed a strong competition with Yang Yi's two works. Half a month had passed, and the box office of Frozen was still strong. Not only did it not decline as many people had predicted, but because of its good reputation and a relaxing and interesting plot, this animated movie took advantage of the declining box office of The Shawshank Redemption to once again take the top spot in the daily box office rankings. This was definitely a miraculous performance for an animated movie. Interestingly, the box office performance of Frozen was shocking, and the box office performance of The Shawshank Redemption was also shocking. This movie had high hopes in the early days of its release, and even many veteran film critics endorsed it. It also maintained a very high rating on movie rating websites because of its heart-wrenching story. However, a movie like this was praised for being good, but it wasn't a hit. After a short period of peak box office sales, the movie gradually declined until it lost its #1 spot. Then, a few days later, it was overtaken by Assassination Crisis. This kind of abnormal behavior left many people in the film industry puzzled. This was obviously a very good movie. Why was no one willing to buy tickets to watch it? In fact, many of the audience's comments had already told them the answer. Heartbreaking. This is undoubtedly a good movie, and the story is very profound. However, after watching it, I feel that this is not a commercial movie at all, but a literary film. Chapter 1156. The day before Shishi's birthday, Lance Haokai, who had been on a business trip to Beijing for a real estate industry conference, also came back. Wow, Daddy Lon, you're back. When he brought Lon Xian to Yang Yi's house to visit, Shishi first cried out in surprise. Then, the smug little girl shyly revealed that she had lost another tooth recently. She pursed her lips and giggled. I know, Daddy Lon. You must have come back to celebrate my birthday, right? Lance Haokai laughed and reached out to pat Shishi's little head. He said loudly, Of course. How could Daddy Lon miss Shishi's birthday? Then Daddy Lon, will you prepare a birthday present for me? Shishi looked at Lance Haokai expectantly and gestured with her two little hands. It has to be a very big present. The generous image of Daddy Lon had long been established in Shishi's heart. The little girl was thinking about Daddy Lan's present. It's a very big present. You'll definitely like it. Lance Haokai mysteriously raised a finger and laughed at Shishi. Originally, Lon Xian had nothing to do with it, but when she heard her father say this, she turned around in confusion and raised her little head. Is there a very big present? Daddy, why didn't I see it? The excited Shishi jumped in front of her little friend and pointed at herself. She giggled and said, Xian, because it's my birthday present. It's not yours. Your birthday present will only be available on your birthday. But your birthday has already passed, so you'll have to wait until next year. In order not to cause her little friend to misunderstand, she even explained. Lon Xian wasn't that stupid. She quickly waved her hands and said with a pout, No, I'm talking about my father's birthday present for you. I've already prepared a delicious present for you, Shishi. I've prepared a lot of my favorite food. Cough cough. Lance Haokai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He grabbed Lon Xian and said, You can't say it. It's fun to let Shishi open the birthday present you prepared for her. If you tell her what the birthday present is, it won't be fun. Only then did Lon Xian come to her senses, and she giggled sheepishly while rubbing her tummy. Shishi blinked her big bright eyes and asked curiously, Then Papa Lon, do I have a gift? Of course I do. I just don't want Xian to see it. Lance Haokai laughed. I'm just afraid that she will accidentally say it. Lon Xian was teased by her father again and again. She felt a little embarrassed. She angrily pulled Shishi and shouted, "Shishi, let's go play. Don't talk to him anymore." "I still want a present." The two little girls ran away. Cece's laughter was still like a kite with a broken string, drifting over from the top of the stairs. Yang Yi was drinking tea with Lance Hao Kai in the living room. He knew that Lance Hao Kai had always doted on Shishi. At this time he couldn't help but ask, "Big brother Lan, what birthday present did you prepare for Shishi?" Lance Hao Kai rubbed his chin and said cheerfully, "I have to prepare the best. There's a jewelry exhibition in the capital recently. Jing Jing came with me to the capital to visit this jewelry exhibition, so I asked Jing Jing to help me choose a very beautiful necklace. Shishi should like it." Necklace? Although he had expected it, Yang Yi still couldn't help but look surprised. Without asking, Yang Yi could guess that this necklace was not cheap. It definitely wasn't an ordinary diamond necklace worth tens of thousands. With Lance Hao Kai's wealth, it would be fine if he didn't make a move, but once he did, it would definitely be worth at least $1 million. Yang Yi frowned slightly. He chose his words carefully and said tactfully, "Big brother Lan, Shishi is only 7 years old. Isn't it a little too early for her to wear a necklace?" Lance Hao Kai's ability to mingle in the business world was inseparable from his smooth and slick mind. No matter how tactful Yang Yi's words were, Lance Hao Kai could still hear the rejection in Yang Yi's tone. However, his relationship with Yang Yi was obvious, so Lance Hao Kai didn't beat around the bush. He pointed directly at Yang Yi and said with a smile, "Old brother, when it comes to educating children, you are indeed amazing. I can't compare. But on this issue today, you'll have to listen to me." Yang Yi was stunned, but he didn't refute. Instead, he calmed down and listened to what Lance Hao Kai had to say. "I know you don't want Shishi to develop bad habits. You don't want to raise Shishi to be like those rich second-generation heirs who are often scolded on the internet, full of problems." As Lance Hao Kai sipped his tea, he said with assurance, "But sometimes going too far is as bad as not going far enough. You should also understand that your current status is no longer the same as when you had nothing. And Shishi's father is already one of the richest men in the country. Your attitude towards luxury goods should also be changed to your current position. You shouldn't still be repulsed and resistant, but should also learn to accept and enjoy them." Lance Hao Kai waved his hand and said, "Just like Xian Air. I won't let her spend money casually, but when it comes to food, clothing, housing and transportation, I definitely won't treat her badly. Everything is the best. For example, clothes, she must buy the best. I won't tell her the price, but I will buy it for her so that she can wear it comfortably." Yang Yi fell into deep thought. Raise the boy in poverty, and raise the girl in wealth. This is the truth passed down from the older generation. Lance Hao Kai waved his hand and said, "If I gave birth to a son, then I'll let him suffer a little. It doesn't matter, but on Xianer's side, I've never let her suffer, except for losing weight." Back to the jewelry. You see, Xianer doesn't usually wear any jewelry, but do you know that there are boxes of jewelry in her dressing table? Lance Hao Kai smiled and said to Yang Yi, "I don't let her wear jewelry on the street, but you have to prepare them for the child and let her know the use of these jewelry. Now children are at the age where they like to imitate and learn from adults, especially girls. They should learn from their mothers how to dress themselves. Shishi is the same. She can't always let you, her father, pick out clothes for her and tie her hair. Girls have to learn these skills from their mothers, because only women understand other women. Putting makeup aside for the time being, the matching of clothes and jewelry would be useful in the future. Moreover, it was a girl's nature to love beauty. You can't let her suppress it all the time. You have to encourage her to try it openly and guide her correctly. In the future, she won't hide from you and secretly learn some bad habits." Lance Hao Kai persuaded earnestly. If it were someone else, Yang Yi might still not allow him to give Shishi jewelry as a birthday gift, but Lance Hao Kai was different. Lance Hao Kai was Shishi's godfather, or in Western terms, godfather. He cared for and loved Shishi, just like how Yang Yi took care of Lan Xian. Yang Yi couldn't dissuade Lance Hao Kai, and was even convinced by him. He could only smile bitterly and say, "It's over, big brother Lan. You gave her such a good gift, but as her father, I didn't give as good a gift. What should I do?" E. The gift is small, but the thought is important. Don't fuss over these things. Although Lan's Hao Kai was comforting Yang Yi, he was smiling proudly again. No, he couldn't let others beat him like this. Yang Yi had to come up with a creative idea that no one else could beat. Chapter 1157. On the morning of July 13th, the Yang family's villa was bustling with activity. At night, Chen Shiyuan's family, Nan Zhaoyu's family, and Lu Xiaoyu's family, who had already moved to their new home in Wuhu district, might find it inconvenient to go home. Therefore, after careful consideration, Yang Yi decided to arrange Xishi's birthday party during the day. That way the children could have more fun. However, it was too early to hold an event during the day. The balloons, ribbons, and other decorations in the courtyard had yet to be hung up, so they had to be set up on the spot. Yu Ying, Wu Yu, Chen Guoqiang, and the other parents were also very enthusiastic. No one was willing to sit by the side and watch the fun. Without any greeting, everyone rolled up their sleeves and happily helped Yang Yi and Mo Fei. The more people there were, the more strength there was. In a short while, the scene was set up. As for the children, there was no need to worry. They had already gone crazy from having fun. One had to know that when a large group of children of the same age gathered together, they would be able to construct a happy world that belonged to them. What parents? They would all be thrown to the back of their minds. While Yang Yi and the others were busy in the courtyard, they saw Xishi and her friends running in and out of the villa's gate. Their pleasant laughter was endless. Not only that, but they were also playing and chasing after the running buns on the grass. A few girls in white dresses, like Yang Luoqi and Lu Xiaoyu, had dirtied their dresses. Little you you're going to piss me off. Lu Xiaoyu's mother didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She stomped her feet and said gloomily, "It wasn't easy for me to dress you up so beautifully, and now you're making yourself look like a mud child. Wasn't that right?" Mama Lu had thought that a rich family's birthday party would be very high-end. She had specially bought Lu Xiaoyu a new dress and braided her hair with a hairband. She was worried that she would be looked down upon if she didn't dress up well. In the end, when she came to Yang Yi's place, she was surprised to find that this so-called birthday party was similar to the gatherings that she usually invited the children to play at home. Other than Yang Luoqi, Lu Weisha, and Yu Xiaowei, who were dressed up a little more formally, the other children, including the birthday girl Xishi, were dressed the same as they usually were. Of course, it wasn't unusual to dress up nicely. It was just that Lu Xiaoyu was having fun with her friends, and forgot that she was wearing a new dress. Mama Lu's heart ached when she saw her dirty her dress. The parents were so happy that they were laughing happily. Murphy quickly comforted them, said, "It's okay. Don't be reserved with us. The children can play however they want. If the clothes are dirty, you can wash them when you go back. It won't affect anything." This was just a small episode. Lu Xiaoyu, who was scolded by her mother, was only reserved for a few minutes. After returning to the living room with Xishi and the others, she put her mother's words to the back of her mind and happily joined in the discussion with her friends. "We can't play on the grass. It'll dirty our clothes. We can play in the house. Play in the house. Play in the house. Then we can play hide and seek again." As the little host, Xishi was surrounded by her friends. She happily gestured with her hands and said, "We can hide upstairs and downstairs. Don't play hide and seek. The last time we played, we looked for a long time. Have you forgotten, Xishi?" Nan Zhaoyu shouted. Xishi blinked. Soon, she found the answer in her memory. She giggled and said, "I remember. It's Xian Air." She ran outside. "Ha, me?" Lan Xian asked in a daze. She had no recollection of this at all. "Yes, it's Xian Air." Chen Shiyuan also quickly shouted. "Xian Air, have you forgotten? At that time, you ran to my papa and asked for barbecue." Xishi enthusiastically helped Lan Xian recall. "Oh." Lan Xian scratched her head and smiled a little embarrassedly. Regardless of what they were playing, the little ones in the house quickly became lively again. Their noisy shouts and cheerful laughter quickly spread to the courtyard. Tong Tong was busy drinking milk and didn't play with his sisters. However, when he heard his sister's laughter, he couldn't sit still beside his mother. He pushed his mother's hand away and slid down from his mother's lap. His little hand was pulled by his mother, and his clothes were lifted up, revealing his white and fat belly. "Where are you going?" Murphy asked. However, Tong Tong's mind was full of his sisters. He kept walking forward. His little hand was pulled by his mother, but he didn't give up. He made a hum-hum sound from his nose. "Let him play. I'll talk to Shi and ask her to take care of her brother." Yang Yi saw this and took Tong Tong from Murphy with a smile. When he came to the living room, Yang Yi was surprised to see that each child was holding a small doll. They were sitting around the tea table, as if they were having a meeting. Seeing his appearance, Cici and the other girls all screamed, as if they had been caught doing something bad. It was unknown who took the lead. "Why are you screaming so loudly? What are you playing?" Yang Yi looked at them with a smile and asked. "Acting in a movie. Uncle Yang, we are acting in a movie." It seemed that it wasn't a secret. Lu Xiaoyu and Chen Shiyun rushed to report it to Yang Yi. "What movie are you acting in?" Yang Yi asked curiously. At this moment, the children looked at each other and didn't know how to answer. "Yes, we are acting in a movie. Little Yu said that she hadn't acted in a movie with us before, so we said let's act in a movie together." Shishi was holding a big doll. Her face was red as she explained to her father shyly. "Now Xiaoyu is Papa, and Lu Weisha can't speak. She is going to act as me, which is Little Mai." When Shishi was talking about the roles, Yang Yi understood. It turned out that Shishi was playing house with the children, but she changed the name of playing house to acting in a movie. Of course, the movie they were imitating was The Fugitive, which Shishi had acted in as an important supporting role. Chen Shiyun is the grandpa veterinarian and... Shishi rambled on. At this time, Lu Xiaoyu's turn hadn't come yet, but Lu Xiaoyu couldn't wait to raise her hand and report to Uncle Yang. "Uncle Yang, there's me too. I'm acting as a police officer." Because Yang Yi was more important in the children's hearts, and because he was usually very friendly and easygoing, they weren't as embarrassed as they were when they met other adults. Instead, they treated Yang Yi as their good friend, and were willing to share with Yang Yi. Hee, because Xiaoyu's papa is a police officer. Shishi put her chin on the head of the big doll, and said to her father with a smile, "What about Xian Air?" Yang Yi asked with a smile. "Xian Air is also a police officer, but I don't know what I'm going to act in. Because it's not fun." Shishi pouted at this time, thinking of the problem she was struggling with when her father came in. "You don't have to act in anything. You can be a director like Sister Du or Grandpa Chen. You can tell these actors how to act in this story." Yang Yi smiled, reached out and drew a circle around the children, and said, "Then you can take out your camera and use the video function to shoot a movie for everyone." This was a group of children playing house. In fact, no matter how much effort they put into it, they wouldn't be able to do anything. However, Yang Yi still encouraged Shishi to let her use her imagination to her heart's content. The most important thing was to have fun. "Yes, I can be a director. Papa is still the best." After hearing her father's words, Shishi's eyes lit up. She happily jumped up from the carpet and happily ran upstairs to get her camera. Tong Tong blinked in confusion, not knowing why his sister ran away when she saw him coming. He turned around and curiously looked at his sister's back. Yang Yi's hand moved, and then he remembered the purpose of his visit. He smiled and called Lan Xian, asking her to help take care of Tong Tong. They were both Tong Tong's sisters, so it didn't matter who took care of him. Chapter 1158. Although Yang Yi didn't think that these children would be able to come up with anything, he was still looking forward to seeing Shishi bring her friends along. He wanted to see what kind of creative performances they could come up with. However, Yang Yi still overestimated these 7- or 8-year-old children. Shishi was very interested in acting in a movie. She was also happy to share her experience and use her pitiful little knowledge to bring her friends along. However, the other children weren't Shishi after all. In the beginning, when everyone was talking about acting in a movie, everyone seemed to be in high spirits as they cheered each other on. However, when Shishi brought down her small card camera from upstairs and began to talk about the script with her friends, Some of the children sitting around the coffee table began to get distracted. Nan Zhaoyu, the male lead, had originally been looking straight at Shishi, but at this moment, his envious gaze fell on the camera. After a few minutes, the little boy couldn't help but ask, "Shishi, can I have a look at your camera? Just for a moment." Nan Zhaoyu grabbed the edge of the coffee table with his two small hands and asked pleadingly. Shishi's endless chatter was interrupted, but the little girl didn't mind. She bent down, took the camera strap off her neck, and handed it to Nan Zhaoyu generously. Then Shishi didn't feel that she had been interrupted at all, and continued enthusiastically. "Exanair, you have to drive a police car and chase after Zhaoyu and Sister Xiaowei with little Yu." Yu Xiaowei listened attentively, and Lu Xiaoyu was very supportive. She grinned as she listened, but someone beside them was distracted. Before Chen Shiyun could explain the plot, she couldn't help but lean over and study the camera with Nan Zhaoyu. In addition to them, Lu Weisha was also distracted. Of course, Lu Weisha couldn't be blamed. After Tong Tong was arranged to sit next to Sister Xinair by his father, he couldn't sit still. He turned around and saw that on the other side of Sister Xinair was the beautiful foreign girl he had shared with to play with. Thus Lil Pippi had his own little idea. He got up from the ground and hobbled to his toy basket. "Momo, where are you going?" Lan Xian didn't forget the responsibility that her father had given her, but she was too lazy to get up. She turned her head, blinked, and looked at Tong Tong carefully. Was this also considered taking care of him? She saw the little guy press his hands down, and his slightly bulging buttocks, which were wrapped in diapers, stuck out. He rummaged through his toy basket for a while, and finally, he exclaimed and struggled to take out two car toys. One was a bright red fire truck, and the other was a yellow sports car. Both of them were Tong Tong's favorites. The little guy held one toy in each hand and walked back with a big smile. He nudged Lan Xian with his buttocks and sat down next to Sister Lan Xian's chubby buttocks. However, this time he squeezed between Lan Xian and Lu Weisha, so he was facing Sister Lu Weisha. "Here is for you." Tong Tong hesitated for a moment as he looked at the blue-eyed little girl. He weighed the two cars with his small hands, and in the end he stuffed the bigger car into Sister Lu Weisha's arms. His eyes were filled with anticipation. "Sister, you must take it. Otherwise you will be disappointed." Lu Weisha was a little confused. She had the same feeling as when Tong Tong gave her the robot. She scratched her head, hugged the red fire truck, and said to Tong Tong in confusion. She knew that Tong Tong didn't speak Swedish, so she thought hard for a while. Finally, she found a Chinese sentence that she had learned recently and asked, "What is you familiar with?" Surprisingly, Tong Tong actually understood Lu Weisha's Chinese, which was not very standard. He grinned and said, "Handing over the RV." Usually Murphy would teach him how to speak at home. Other than learning how to count, the toys that Tong Tong played with the most, and was most interested in, became his main subject of learning. Young, he even found a picture book in the Sahara publishing house that was specially designed for children to babble, and asked Mo Fei to teach it to him. Fire trucks, taxis, cars, planes, helicopters, elephants, rabbits, squirrels. At this stage, Tong Tong's learning was still not standard. Just like what he was teaching Lu Weisha, he said fire truck was handing over the RV. However, his memory was not bad, so he could remember a lot of things. The only thing left was to correct the pronunciation. However, Lu Weisha didn't understand either. She foolishly followed little Momo's instruction in Chinese, only to see the blue-eyed big sister also blinking her eyes and saying, "Wai Fong Ha." Little Fuchin originally only wanted to play bumper carts with his big sister, but at this moment, he saw that his big sister's words were not standard, so he threw his original intention to the back of his mind. He hurriedly waved his small hands and said in a childish voice, "No, no." The little boy's expression was still a little anxious. He said seriously, "Handing over the RV." Lu Weisha foolishly learned, "Yao flips the car." At this moment, Lu Weisha accidentally said a word correctly. However, Tong Tong still shook his head. He felt that the girl was wrong. The little boy's expression became more and more anxious. His thick eyebrows furrowed. I can't teach her. What should I do?" After thinking for a while, he got up and ran to the sofa. He took the picture book that his mother had placed there and brought it over. This time, Tong Tong was not as scared. He openly sat down next to Lu Weisha and naturally leaned into her arms. The picture book was placed on his lap, and Xiao Tianyu's little hands flipped through the pages. Fortunately, there weren't many pages, and each page was printed on copper plate paper. After a while, Xiao Tianyu found the picture of a fire engine. He pointed at it excitedly and continued to teach. After talking for a while, Shishi finally came back to her senses. At this moment, the little girl was surprised to find that the only people who seemed to be listening to her were Xiaowei and Lu Weisha was learning how to talk to her little brother. Lan Xian was smiling as she listened. She seemed to be amused by the two guys. Chen Shiyin and Nan Zhaoyu were playing with the camera. Chen Shiyin was more interested in the camera. She did not know when she had snatched it. Nan Zhaoyu could only watch from beside her. He gestured with his fingers as if he was teaching her how to use it. She was dumbfounded. She was stunned for a while before she pouted and said unhappily, You guys aren't listening to me. The teacher said that we have to listen to others carefully. We can't do our own things. We can't talk to our desk mates. Lu Xiaoyu blinked and said, Shishi, I'm listening. I'm talking about them. Shishi finally understood how a teacher felt when facing disobedient children. Chen Shiyin and Nan Zhaoyu saw that Shishi was angry. The two of them did not dare to be distracted again. They quickly put the camera on the coffee table and carefully lowered their heads. Of course, Shishi did not take this to heart. After Lu Xiaoyu and Yang Luoqi coaxed her for a while, she threw this depressed mood to the back of her mind. She smiled happily and recovered her previous enthusiasm. It was just that her friends didn't seem to be very interested in this game that was so complicated that they couldn't understand it. Under Cici's command, Nan Zhaoyu and Yu Xiaowei reluctantly acted out the opening plot. There were so many mistakes that everyone soon felt bored. I want to swim. In the increasingly depressing atmosphere, Yang Luoqi whispered, Shishi has a swimming pool at home. Yeah. It's so hot now. Swimming is so comfortable. Chen Shiyin happily raised her voice and proposed to her friends in high spirits. Let's go swimming together. What if I can't swim? Nan Zhaoyu scratched his head. Lan Xian was also interested in their discussion. She raised her hand and said with a smile, I know. You can wear a swimming ring because Momo can't swim either. Shishi saw that her friend's attention had been completely diverted, but her movie plan was not over yet. The little girl muttered gloomily, But I have to tell my papa about swimming. I can only go swimming if my papa agrees. Otherwise, the swimming pool will be closed. In fact, she also likes swimming very much, but she always felt that she had something to do, so she felt uncomfortable. However, the little girl did not know how close her father was in the hearts of these friends. When she said this, Chen Shiyin, who had proposed loudly just now, got up excitedly and said, I'll ask Uncle Yang. Chapter 1159. In the yard, the decorations for the birthday party had been done, but it had to wait until noon to start. By the way, lunch was changed to cake and barbecue. Therefore, Yang Yi accompanied Lan Caokai, Nanny Yun, and other parents to sit under the temporary shelter that had just been set up. They drank tea and chatted while enjoying the shade. Originally, Yang Yi was going to prepare snacks and fruits, as well as the barbecue ingredients that everyone would eat together at noon. But Wu Yu, Yuing, and the other mothers were very enthusiastic and wanted to take over these kitchen chores. Even Mo Fei also went to the kitchen to help. As for these men, they were driven out and left in the yard to chat. With the two gods of wealth, Lan Caokai and Yang Yi, the content of the men's conversation was naturally in the direction of financial management. It was worth mentioning that last year, Chen Guoqiang, Nanny Yun, and others also consulted Lan Caokai's opinion and boldly bought real estate in Wuhu District. Since the beginning of this year, Wuhu District had begun to renovate old houses. Although it was not their turn to receive demolition compensation, the housing prices in Wuhu District had begun to rise. Those who had already bought houses, like Chen Guoqiang and Nanny Yun, were happy to see that they had earned a sum of money. Like Yuing, after earning her royalties last year, She also began to invest in real estate under the tips of everyone's conversations. Her assets had also improved. Of course, for Yuing, her little Bubba's adventure had been arranged by Sahara Publishing House to be made into a picture book, an audiobook, and even an animation adaptation. The income in the later stage was flowing into her. Therefore, Yuing did not care about the little appreciation of real estate. But for ordinary families like Nanny Yun, Chen Guoqiang, Yang Gua, and others, the income from the appreciation of real estate was real joy. Now that they had the opportunity to chat with Lan Caocai again, they naturally looked forward to getting some money-making news from Lan Caocai. Perhaps the news that was not very eye-catching in the eyes of the rich was great for them. Lan Caocai naturally understood what these parents were thinking, but his EQ was very high. He was always smiling and skillfully evading their questions. He was always able to talk about things that he shouldn't talk about, but he wasn't stingy with what he could talk about. He was very measured and didn't leave any traces as he revealed some information that could make them money. In contrast, Yang Yi's social skills were somewhat weak. After all, this was an ability that could only be honed through years of accumulation, and it had a lot to do with one's personality. Therefore, even though he had tried very hard to integrate into the world of ordinary people, Yang Yi still couldn't handle these situations. Fortunately, he was smart. He talked and laughed, but most of the time, he agreed with Lan Caocai. He rarely got involved in these topics. The ones who saved Yang Yi were his favorite, the innocent and naive children. He didn't know how Chen Shiyin and the others convinced Shishi. Anyway, a large group of children, including Shishi, swarmed out of the door and ran noisily in front of Yang Yi. Lanxin, on the other hand, was dutiful. She held Xiao Tianyu's hand and walked slowly behind them. Interestingly, although Lan Xian fell behind because of Tong Tong, the one who was anxious to catch up with her sisters was Tong Tong. The one who didn't want to run too fast was Lan Xian. The weather was so hot. Why did they run so fast? Uncle Yang, Uncle Yang. Chen Shiyin was the most enthusiastic. She ran over and grabbed the arm of Yang Yi's beach chair. She asked excitedly, Can we swim in your swimming pool? Yang Yi was a little surprised and asked, You want to swim? Yes, yes, yes. The children around Yang Yi nodded excitedly. Lu Weisha's reaction was a little slow because she had to wait for Shishi to translate for her. Lu Weisha, who finally understood the children's thoughts, waved her arms happily and said in English, Swim, I like to swim. What? At this time, several members of the mother group, including Wu Yu, Murphy, Yuing, and the others, came over with trays. Seeing the lively scene, they asked curiously. When they found out that the children wanted to swim, Wu Yu and Yuing quickly waved their hands and said, No, we didn't bring a change of clothes or a swimsuit. How can we play in the water? They were right. The children didn't think it through. However, this kind of rejection was still a little hard for the children to accept. Chen Shiyin and Yang Luoqi pouted and said unhappily, We want to swim. Seeing this, Yang Yi quickly got up from the beach chair and pressed on their shoulders. He smiled and comforted them. It's okay. Today is a little sudden. How about this? Next time you come to play, bring your swimsuits. Uncle will open the swimming pool for you to play in, okay? Yang Yi's words were obviously much more persuasive than their parents' scolding. Although they still looked unwilling, at least they just pouted unhappily and shook their buttocks reluctantly. They didn't continue to be stubborn with their mother. Come and eat the honeydew, watermelon, mango, and cherries. They've all been cut and washed. Murphy also smiled and greeted the children. At this moment, Lan Xian, who was standing at the back, walked to the front while holding Tong Tong's hand. She originally wanted to return Tong Tong to Father Yang. But when she heard this, her eyes immediately lit up. Lan Xian couldn't care less about Tong Tong, this little burden. She held Tong Tong's hand, and didn't care that the other children were still sulking. She and Tong Tong moved forward silently. They couldn't make a big fuss. There were so many people here. If they wanted to eat good food, they would have to fight for it. Then, she let go of Tong Tong's hand and picked up a piece of honeydew from the table. Lan Xian took a bite first. When she lowered her head, she saw Tong Tong's eager little eyes. That's right. There's still my little brother. Lan Xian then freed one hand and picked up another piece of cantaloupe from the plate. However, Lan Xian noticed that the kernels on the new piece of honeydew were not removed. But she didn't have a free hand. What should she do? It's okay. Lan Xian had her ways. She took the piece of honeydew that she had already taken a bite of and scratched the new piece of honeydew. The kernels were removed in an instant. Here, this is for you. Lan Xian handed the cantaloupe that she had prepared to little Momo. As she spoke, she couldn't wait to take another bite of her own cantaloupe. It's so sweet and cool. It's delicious. Tong Tong's mouth watered when he saw Lan Xian's intoxicated expression. He held the honeydew clumsily and imitated Lan Xian's actions by taking a small bite of the honeydew. It's sweet, right? Lan Xian didn't forget to look at Tong Tong when she was satisfied with the honeydew. Tong Tong couldn't be bothered to speak. He could only raise his head and move his mouth. His eyes were so sweet that they were squinting as he giggled. It's better to eat good food with Sister Xian air. But at this time, Mo Fei also turned around and saw it. She smiled grumpily and said, Xian air. SK. You didn't wash your hands before eating. I brought a wet tissue. We can just wipe our hands. Yu Ying said hurriedly. She and her friends were a little depressed because they couldn't swim. However, perhaps because of Lan Xian's influence, they wiped their hands with the help of their mothers. They let go of their gloomy feelings and went to eat the fruits. Lan Zhoukai sat at the side and ate the watermelon with a smile. Suddenly, he remembered something and said with a smile, Oh yeah, didn't you say that you like to swim? Recently, our company is sponsoring the Municipal Sports Commission to organize a swimming competition for children above the age of 6 and below the age of 12. There are different age groups, boys and girls. It's a big competition and there are many people who signed up. The deadline for registration is the 20th or 25th of this month. If you are interested, you can participate. Swimming competition? It's organized in the city. Will there be many children who specialize in swimming participate? Wu Yu was interested and asked curiously. Lan Zhoukai said happily, Yes, it's organized in the city. I'm not sure about the specific requirements for registration. I'll ask someone later and send it to you. But isn't the country promoting national fitness and daily exercise? The city is also organizing some sports. Since it's summer now, there are football, basketball, etc. There are all kinds of competitions. But I feel that the swimming competition is better. At least it's not easy to get injured. Also, the venue and referees for this competition are very proper. It's safe. Lan Zhoukai hadn't actually signed Lan Xian up. He had even forgotten about it before. He only remembered it now. After all, Boss Lan had a lot of things to do. His subordinates reported this matter to him, and he signed the sponsorship fee. Then he threw it to the back of his mind. Chapter 1160. Wu Yu obviously wanted to sign Yang Luoqi up, but she was a little unwilling to give up and said, It should be divided into professional and non-professional groups. After all, the professionals are too strong. They practice swimming in the pool all day long, while we only play in the community pool. How can we compete with them? Shishi loved to eat cherries, especially fresh and plump cherries. After washing them, they looked fresh and juicy, and their red color looked very delicious. She carefully pinched the long stalks of a few cherries, opened her mouth, and gently took a bite of the cherry in her right hand. Shishi looked very ladylike when she ate the cherries. But in fact, the little girl didn't think too much about it. Her usual posture when eating cherries was also very normal. Now, it was just because one of her small front teeth was a little loose. Although it didn't affect her eating, Shishi, who had experience with tooth replacement, was afraid that it would look bad if her tooth fell out, would rather eat slowly and carefully avoid it. The little girl was eating the sweet and sour cherries with a satisfied face, but her beautiful big eyes were curiously looking at the adults who were discussing the swimming competition. Shishi was also very interested in this topic. Competition? It seemed that participating in the competition could earn money, and then they could buy dolls. After hearing Wu Yu's worried words, Lan Zhoukai said with a smile, It's okay. Don't think too much about winning or losing. The important thing is to participate. Chen Guoqiang agreed. That's right. Nowadays, there are many competitions where you don't necessarily have to win a prize. As long as you dare to participate and try, it's already a success. He also shared a story about a marathon. There were many marathons in the country now, and a student in their gym also liked to run marathons besides fitness. He participated in the half-horse race in Jiangqing last month, and he's going to Shanghai to run a horse race next month. He participated in so many competitions. Did he win any prizes? Yuing asked curiously. What prizes? Chen Guoqiang smiled. If he was going for the prize money, he wouldn't have run, because all the marathons in the country were taken by those black people. They were all professional marathoners. But it doesn't matter if he didn't win any prizes. He runs marathons for the process and to enjoy the fun of running. He wins when he finishes. Lu Kong said with a smile. Yes, he wins when he finishes. After they finished the race, they would receive a symbolic award. Furthermore, he told us that if he ran a marathon, he would compete with himself. As long as he could run faster than his best result, it would be something worth being happy about. Chen Guoqiang said in high spirits after getting the agreement. At this time, Nan Ian spoke up. Like an old pedant, he concluded with a cadence. This is called self-challenge, and I enjoy it. Lans Hao Kai, who had just scrolled through his phone, raised his head and said with a smile, Brother Nan is right. By the way, there are also awards for this competition. Regardless of whether you win or not, all the children who participate can receive a participation award. I've already registered. What else is there to think about? Chen Guoqiang said loudly. Since it's a competition sponsored by Boss Land's company, it's good to let the children see the world. Lu Kang's temper was more similar to Chen Guoqiang's. He patted the armrest of the beach chair manfully and said with a smile, Okay, count me in. I'll let little Fishy sign up too. Her swimming is average, but if she participates in this kind of large-scale competition and sees the scene, she won't have to be afraid of stage fright in the future. Yuing was still a little worried. She was not like the others who had a man at home to make decisions for them. Yuing, who relied on her daughter for survival, still asked worriedly, But the swimming competition is in the water after all. Is it dangerous? Lans Hao Kai was not as reckless as the other fathers. He smiled and said, Mama Yu, this swimming competition is still dangerous, but it's held in the city's swimming pool after all. The parents can watch the competition from the side. In the swimming pool, I heard that the sports administration has professional swimming coaches in the pool to observe. There are also referees on the stage and lifeguards on standby. The sports administration will naturally pay close attention to safety issues when organizing a competition. But I still suggest that everyone act according to their own circumstances. It's a swimming competition. Of course, if you want to learn how to swim well, let's go and see the big scene. Considering the safety issue, the parents were a little hesitant. Even Chen Guoqiang and Lu Kong, who were making a fuss because of their manliness, touched their chins and fell silent. Just eat the melon, don't think so much. Lans Hao Kai saw that the atmosphere was a little gloomy. He laughed and said, I just suddenly thought of this matter. I'll mention it to you guys. You guys can understand it later. The adults' movements were still heard by the children. Chen Shuryan heard a few times and excitedly ran over to share with her friends. I don't want to participate in the swimming competition. I don't even know how to swim. Nan Xiaoyu scratched his head and mumbled. I can swim. I'm amazing. Chen Shuryan said proudly with her chest puffed out. Shishi stretched out her small arms and smiled, showing her white teeth. I can swim too. Xian Air and I are both very good at swimming. Hearing Shishi call her name, Lan Xian finally reacted. While eating the freshly baked cookies that her mother's group had just sent up, she asked confusedly, What? What? Murphy helped to take over the Tong Tong. Although Lan Xian also shared some food with the Tong Tong, Murphy was not at ease, especially when there were cherries on the table with pits. Murphy felt that it was better to be cautious. Without the Tong Tong following her, Lan Xian was even more relaxed in front of so many delicious foods. However, now Shishi hugged Lan Xian's arm and became a new burden. She smiled and said, Xian Air, let's go to the swimming competition together, okay? Why do we have to participate in the competition? Lan Xian asked in confusion. Because if we participate in the competition, we can get gold coins from Papa. We can get a lot of gold coins. She took Lan Xian's hand and twisted her small body left and right. She pestered Lan Xian and said coquettishly, Okay? Is that okay? There are dolls, there are dolls. Lan Xian seemed to be very tired and sighed. Then she waved her hand and said, Okay, I'll go to the competition with you. Then we can all have gold coins. She said happily, I'll ask Papa if he can give us more gold coins, because we need to buy a lot of dolls. I don't want gold coins anymore, because I found that you don't even need gold coins to eat in your house. Papa Yang forgot. Lan Xian said proudly. The two of them chatted happily, but Chen Shiyin became nervous. Then are you going to compete with me? I want to be the champion. Chen Shiyin played in the swimming pool with Shi and Lan Xian, so she knew that the two of them were very good swimmers. Shiyin, your papa said that we don't want to be the champion. We're already very good at the competition. She still remembered the conversation between the adults just now. She made a face at Chen Shiyin and said in a clear voice, So Shi and Xian Air will be the champion? Lu Xiaoyu blinked and asked. No. Shi quickly shook her head. Just now, Papa said that there will be a prize if we participate. If we participate in the competition, Papa can give us 1, 2, 3. 1 plus 5 is 6 gold coins. Yang Yi didn't know that his daughter was actually so smart. She could actually understand so much key information from the conversation between the fathers just now. There was 1 gold coin for participating in the competition, and 5 gold coins for winning the competition. Papa Lan said that there would be a prize if they participated in the competition. Shishi's arithmetic was so good. How could she not know that 1 plus 5 was 6? This was 2 dolls. The little girl, who was especially short of gold coins to buy dolls recently, suddenly became enthusiastic. Chapter 1161. When it was close to noon, Yang Yi, Chen Guoqiang, and the others brought out the smokeless grill used for barbecue. The group of mothers also served the ingredients that had been washed and cut. There was no need for any ceremony. Cece's birthday party had officially begun. For the children, it didn't matter whether there was a program or not. It was more important to have fun and eat to their heart's content. I want to drink. Shishi, do you have any drinks at home? Chen Shiyin watched the barbecue for a while and couldn't stand the heat. She ran over with her tongue out and said to Shishi, I want to drink soda. I don't want to drink tea. Shishi thought for a moment, and her eyes lit up. She smiled sweetly and said, I know there is soda. It's all in the fridge. Shiyin, let me tell you, yesterday my papa bought a lot of soda. There's Coke, Sprite. Yang Yi passed by the little girls with a few bottles of seasoning. He happened to hear their conversation, so he said with a smile, Shishi, take Xian Air and the others to get the soda. Okay. Cece didn't feel impatient at all. In fact, she was full of energy. She didn't even hear what her father said clearly. She answered readily, and was ready to run away excitedly. Yang Yi hurriedly stopped the reckless little girl and said, You ask Xian Air, Shiyin. By the way, ask the boy Nan Zhaoyu to help carry the drinks. There are disposable cups in the cabinet next to the fridge. Bring them over. Shishi will pour drinks for everyone. Shishi stuck out her tongue embarrassedly and said a few words to her friends. Then, everyone responded and rushed into the villa enthusiastically with Shishi. In front of the fridge, Lan Xian and Shishi were also a little excited. They each pulled the door handle of a fridge and opened it. After the fridge was opened, the cool air rushed to their faces. Lu Xiaoyu narrowed her eyes happily and said, It's so comfortable, so comfortable. I don't even want to go out and play anymore. Shishi took out a large bottle of Coke and giggled. That won't do. We're going to sing the birthday song together. This is delicious. Let me tell you, this orange juice has fruit in it. You have to shake it before drinking. Lan Xian skipped past the other soft drinks and pulled out a bottle of orange juice. She then excitedly introduced it to her friends. Chun Shiryun couldn't help but lick her lips. She said to Lan Xian, "Xianair, I want to drink." Shishi, can you pour some out to eat? Lu Xiaoyu instigated when she saw Shishi put down the drink and take out a disposable cup from the cabinet next to her. She also wanted to drink a cool drink. However, Shishi remembered her father's advice. Although she was excited and didn't listen carefully, as long as she paid attention, the little girl wouldn't forget. Shishi hurriedly waved her hand and said very seriously, "No, we can't drink here. We have to take it out and drink with Papa." "Okay, then let's go outside to drink." Chun Shiryun wasn't discouraged. She helped Shishi pick up the bottle of Coke and shouted. The other children also came out one after another with drinks. Everyone was chattering and working enthusiastically. However, Lan Xian remembered something. She stuffed the orange juice in her hand into Shishi's arms and rummaged in the fridge. For example, Lu Xiaoyu and Yang Luoqi were still a little reserved in Cici's house, but Lan Xian didn't mind at all. It was as if she treated it as her own fridge, and she stuck her little butt out and started rummaging through it with all her might. Shishi held the 2 bottles of drinks with some difficulty. She was strong enough to hold them, but she felt a little unsteady, especially when the drinks had been refrigerated. The hot air outside quickly condensed water droplets on the drinks, which were slippery when she held them. Shishi had to hold them with 2 arms. It was very difficult. Shishi weighed them with difficulty and said, "Xianair, what are you looking for?" Lan Xian turned the 2 bags of vegetables over, but it was already the innermost part. She finally put the vegetables back and discouraged. She shrank back a little with a gray face, looked up and asked in confusion, "Hey, Shishi, I can't find your cake. Where did you put your cake?" Cake. Hearing the key word, the children all looked over. Lan Xian was reluctant to get up. She supported herself with 2 hands on the ground, and the cold air blew on her red face. She looked at Shishi eagerly. "No cake?" Shishi asked with some confusion. Lan Xian nodded quickly. "Yes, the cake is gone." "No cake for her birthday?" Shishi was also anxious. She quickly squatted down, put the 2 bottles of drinks on the ground, and looked into the fridge with Lan Xian. "Papa, it's not good." Shishi held the 2 bottles of drinks. Relying on the advantage of her long legs, she ran in front and rushed out anxiously. Yes, it's not good." Chun Shiryun also rushed to be the vanguard. She followed Shishi breathlessly and echoed. Yang Yi was wearing a mask and roasting chicken wings for the little ones. Although the mama group was also helping, they didn't know much about barbecue. Wu Yu and Yuing volunteered, but one was burned and the other was a little dry and not delicious. In the end, Yang Yi was the one who roasted the chicken wings. They helped to roast the chives, enoki mushrooms, fat beef, and so on with tin foil. These only needed to be mixed with the ingredients and put on the oven. Yang Yi saw Shishi so anxious with a flustered expression on her little face. He couldn't help but feel nervous. He picked up the roasted chicken wings to prevent them from being burned and asked with some confusion, "What happened?" "The cake is gone." Lan Xian ran slowly, but because she was empty-handed, she also chased after Shishi's buttocks and fought to be the first to speak. Yes, Papa, it's not good. My cake is gone. I can't find it in the fridge." Shishi held the 2 drinks and sadly leaned on her father's thigh. She pouted her small mouth and said, I thought it was a steamed bun that ate it. But steamed bun doesn't eat cake." Listening to Shishi's words, the children behind also showed anxious expressions of common enemy. Yang Yi understood Shishi's meaning and couldn't help laughing. Oh. Shishi thought that her father was gloating, so she pushed her head against her father's waist and twisted her little butt. Don't worry. Look, what is that?" Yang Yi's hands were busy. He smiled and nudged the little girl with the side of his body, then pointed to the table under the shade of a tree in the distance with the chicken wing. "Hey, that's a cake." Before Shishi looked over, she heard Lan Xian's surprised cry. Shishi looked over in confusion, and saw a huge cake placed there. Murphy and Wu Jingjing were opening the box. "It's really a cake. The cake is not missing." Shishi was overjoyed. She looked up at her father and pouted her small mouth, But she couldn't hide her surprised smile. Because the cake is custom-made. It wasn't delivered in advance. Yang Yi gently explained. The cake shop just sent it over. It's a surprise for you. Cece was no longer flustered when the cake disappeared, and her mood became relaxed again. She shook her head, and her long ponytail drew a beautiful arc. She giggled and said, "Let's go and get some drinks. Shirin has been waiting for a long time." Lan Xian was still looking at the cake. At this moment, she turned her head and saw the chicken wing in Yang Yi's hand. Her small nose twitched as if she smelled something tempting. She said excitedly, "I want to eat chicken wings. Chicken wings are delicious when eaten with cola." Chapter 1162. When the cake was laid out and the candles were inserted, the little ones couldn't wait any longer. They began to pester their fathers, asking them to bring out the barbecue for them to eat. Under the shade of the cool breeze, they drank the ice-cold bubbling drinks while gnawing on the tender barbecue chicken wings. It was so satisfying. Lan Xian and Chun Shiyin didn't care about their table manners at all. They immediately grabbed the chicken wings from the bamboo skewers and began munching on them. The chicken wings were so greasy that their cheeks were covered in grease. Their eyes were still staring at each other, as if they were competing to see who could eat faster. Shishi was also gnawing on the chicken wings. Her father's barbecued chicken wings were so delicious that all her friends wanted to eat them. How could she not support them? However, Shishi wasn't as anxious as Lan Xian and Chen Shiyin. These two friends were eating the chicken wings in their hands and looking at the pot. Shishi wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to eat. She ate slowly and proudly gestured to Lu Weishao and Lu Xiaoyu about her new discovery. "Look." The birthday boy's eyes turned into crescents as he smiled. She took off the bamboo skewers and directly started eating. However, she loved cleanliness. She only used her thin little fingers to carefully pinch a chicken wing that she had already eaten very cleanly, and gestured to her friends. Then, Cece pinched the two ends of the chicken wing with her two little hands and brought them to her mouth. Then, the little girl unabashedly stuck out her pink little tongue and nimbly drilled out from the place where the meat was originally sandwiched between the two bones. Ho ho! Shishi hooked the chicken wing with her tongue and shook it mischievously. Then she vaguely smiled at her friends. Steamed Bun was anxious. He raised his head and looked at the chicken bones that his little master was still unwilling to throw away. Then he shook his head and jumped beside Shishi. Then he directly grabbed Shishi's pants with his front paws and lifted his body. He stuck out his tongue and wagged his tail hard. The yellow-haired dog's pitiful eyes seemed to say, "Stop playing. If you don't want to eat the bones, can you give me the steamed bun to eat?" Shishi misunderstood. Seeing steamed bun like this, she grabbed the chicken wing bones with her hand and asked curiously, "Steamed bun, do you want to eat it too?" Steamed bun responded with a huff-huff sound. Shishi kindly walked to the table and looked. She found that the barbecued chicken wings had been eaten by Lan Xian and Chen Shiyin. She went to her father's side and whispered, "Papa, Papa, can you give me a barbecued chicken wing? I also want to eat steamed bun." Yang Yi raised his eyebrows and turned his head to look at Shishi and steamed bun, who was wagging his tail behind her. He smiled and said, "Chicken wings can't be eaten. By the way, you have to tell Xian Air and the others that they can't just throw the chicken bones on the ground for steamed bun to eat. They have to clean them up together." Steamed bun wagged his tail pitifully. He was so greedy that he was about to drool. However, he didn't know that the little master had gone to the big master. Not only was he unable to get more delicious chicken wings for him, but he was also being exploited for even the slightest desire he had in the beginning. "Oh Papa, why don't you give steamed bun to eat? He's so cute that he wants to eat chicken," Shishi said unhappily. In Shishi's observation, steamed bun usually ate chicken. Steamed bun, this guy, ate very well at Yang Yi's house. Not only did he have goat's milk to drink regularly, but he also had different types of dog food from time to time. Shishi had also seen her father occasionally feed steamed bun some cooked chicken or beef. In addition to these, steamed bun could enjoy the expensive dog snacks from the pet store. When the owners usually ate fruit, steamed bun would also have a share. "Why don't you give steamed bun chicken wings?" Yang Yi patiently explained to Shishi, because chicken bones are harder and more brittle. Although steamed bun likes to eat them, it's also easy to prick his throat or stomach. That will make him sick. That's why Papa usually only feeds him chicken. Also, steamed bun can't eat the same barbecue as we do. We put salt and other seasonings in it. Steamed bun's body can't take it. Ah, so scary? Shishi frowned worriedly and looked at her father nervously. Of course, Yang Yi didn't intend to let Shishi worry. He smiled and guided the little girl. You can feed him some fruit. In fact, this guy is also greedy. Papa has already fed him today. Don't worry too much. Okay then. Then steamed bun can only eat watermelon. You can't eat cake. Aya, you're really sad today. Shishi said worriedly as she threw the chicken bones into the trash can. She squatted down and rubbed steamed bun's head. The little girl couldn't help but feel sorry for steamed bun. Thus, the sad steamed bun could only watch the children eat heartily. As for steamed bun, he lowered his head and looked at the lonely slice of watermelon on his plate. He was so sad that he couldn't eat it. He could only curl up in a corner and draw circles. No one could understand the sadness of the dog, because the human world was already filled with songs and laughter. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Come here, Shishi. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. Amidst the pleasant singing and cheerful cries of the mother group, the children, as well as the laughing fathers, all gathered around the big cake under the shade of the tree. Here, it had to be mentioned that the birthday song was registered after Yang Yi sang it for Shishi. However, he didn't intend to charge for it. This birthday song was set to be copyright confidential and free to use by the Copyright Bureau. Therefore, after a few years of spreading, this catchy birthday song had become the theme song of many children's birthday parties. But what was interesting was that Yang Yi and Murphy didn't make it public. Including Wu Yu and Yu Ying, no one expected that this popular song was actually produced by Yang Yi. Of course, today's main character was Shishi, not the birthday song. However, Shishi didn't become the center of attention of the children. Including her, all the children rushed over to the birthday cake that they had been looking forward to for a long time. I really like this birthday cake. Lon Xian shouted excitedly. I hope so too. It's so beautiful. Xian Air, look, there's a panda here. Shishi held her hands in front of her and looked at it happily. This cake was specially customized. Although there were only 3 layers, each layer was very thick. In addition, there was an extra carousel made of sugar at the top, making the cake look extra big. In addition to the carousel, on each layer of the cake, there were various animal characters made of cream or sugar. There was a black and white panda, a little dolphin, a cute little pig, a little rabbit, and so on. The workmanship was absolutely exquisite. With the pink color as the main theme, the whole cake looked like a very valuable piece of art. No wonder the children's eyes were shining. You all have to sing the birthday song. After singing the birthday song, you can let Shishi blow out the candles. Then you all can eat the cake. Ewing smiled and reminded the girls. Aya, I don't want to eat the cake. Hee hee, it's so beautiful. Shishi hugged her father's arm. She didn't mind the smell of barbecue on her father's body. As she fell, she giggled. That won't do. I want to eat the cake. It's my birthday. How can I not eat the cake? I don't eat much barbecue. I'm waiting to eat the cake. Lon Xian's words made everyone laugh again. Chapter 1163. No matter how exquisite and beautiful the cake was, it could not escape the fate of being destroyed. After Shishi prayed and blew out the candles, the custom-made pink cake would be cut open and shared with everyone. Didn't you see that Lon Xian was already crying piteously for food? Shishi, you cut it. Yang Yi smiled and handed over a long plastic knife. Shishi opened her mouth in surprise and did not take it. Instead, she stretched her little hands and asked nervously, Can I cut it? Papa, can I really? Not only did the little girl not look reluctant, but she was also eager to try. She looked at her father with her small eyes, worried that she would not cut it well. Of course, you can cut it from the top. You can cut it however you want. Anyway, it's such a big cake, I'm sure it's enough to eat. Yang Yi encouraged with a smile. She hesitated and took the plastic knife. However, when she stood in front of the cake, the little girl seemed to be stunned and stood there in a daze. However, Cece didn't have stage fright. Her big eyes moved nimbly as she carefully sized up the cake. How to cut it? Lu Kong laughed and waved his hand heroically as if he was cutting melons and vegetables. He said, Shishi, be brave and cut it directly. The other mothers were also encouraging Shishi. However, Shishi had her own ideas. The little girl hesitated and moved to the side. After confirming for a while, she finally gathered her courage and raised the plastic knife with her two small hands. Although Cece's expression was a little nervous, she was very focused. Her two small hands held the plastic knife firmly, and she carefully and slowly cut down at the position she had found. When Shishi cut the cake, it felt like a knife cutting into sticky soft candy. Although she could cut it, it was very difficult to cut it. The other parents thought that Shishi had overcome her psychological barrier and cut the cake. They all smiled and clapped for Shishi and cheered. However, Yang Yi looked on indifferently from the side, but there was a trace of a smile in his eyes. This girl. She had cut it very carefully. The position of the knife just so happened to avoid all the small animal figures. Then Shishi learned how her parents cut the cake and tried to cut the cake into pieces. Yang Yi helped to hold a small plate for Shishi to put the cake on. This is for Lu Weisha. Shishi was very busy. She carefully placed a piece of cake with a small animal figure on it on the plate, and said without raising her head. After saying that, she was busy cutting the other cakes. This required a lot of effort to not destroy the original appearance of the cake. Lan Xian, on the other hand, had her own ideas. She rushed over to Cece's side excitedly, holding a small plate in her hand out of nowhere. She said expectantly, Cece, I want this one with a bird. Also, I want a piece of candy with a wooden horse. The wooden horses hanging from the merry-go-round were made with the process of pulling sugar. Lan Xian thought that it would be very sweet and delicious. Okay. You have to wait for a while. Shishi's voice was soft, and she agreed to all of her requests. Shishi didn't know that when she was very focused on cutting the cake, her father, who had been helping by the side, had quietly slipped out of the crowd. Lan Zhoukai came up with a smile and silently replaced Yang Yi to help Shishi take the plate and distribute the cake. The other parents, who had already discussed this beforehand, all laughed as they watched Yang Yi go into the house and come out with a guitar. Chen Shiyin had already received the cake, but before she could eat it, she saw Yang Yi appear with the guitar. The little girl widened her eyes in surprise and was about to ask loudly, Yang. Her mother hurriedly covered Chen Shiyin's mouth and coaxed her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Hurry up and eat the cake. Don't talk nonsense. What nonsense? Chen Shiyin couldn't understand. 10 minutes later, the little friends had already eaten the cake. Even Lan Xian was eating and swaying around Shishi a few times, but Shishi was still distributing the cake. The little girl didn't feel greedy. She treated her work very carefully. She cut every piece of cake very carefully. This is Papa's. Cece was almost done distributing the cake. She placed a piece of cake on the plate beside her. At this moment, she raised her head and said, but before she could finish speaking, she was surprised to see that the person holding the plate was Papa Lan. Where's my papa? Shishi asked blankly. He's here. At this time, Yang Yi had already found a chair and sat down. When he spoke, the parents who had helped cover for him all stood up with smiles. Shishi, today is your birthday. Mom and Papa have prepared a program for you. We're going to sing you a song. At this time, Murphy also put the cake that Shishi had given her on the table beside her. She walked out from the crowd with a smile and said softly. At this time, Shishi also came back to her senses from working hard to distribute the cake. Under the sunlight, her beautiful eyes, which were like black crystals, couldn't help but sparkle. She said in surprise, Really? How could it be cooked? Of course it's true. Yang Yi smiled and sat on the chair. He held the guitar and gently played. Yang Yi played the guitar prelude, which was light and gentle and gave people an inexplicable sense of pleasure. Murphy also naturally hummed softly. Ya dala dala da. Mo Fei's voice could be slightly lowered, and she could sing with a slightly vicissitudes of life. Or she could sing with a soft and pleasant voice like Teresa Tung's. But for this song, she chose a voice that was slightly rough, but soft and sweet. In the accompaniment of Yang Yi's guitar, Murphy smiled and took Shishi's empty hand. She looked at her gently and sang, "My baby, baby, I'll give you a little sweetness so that you can sleep well tonight." As the lyrics changed, Murphy also changed her actions. For example, she gently used her finger to trace the corner of Shishi's slightly long and charming eyes, and the little girl's cheeks that still had some baby fat. She smiled and sang, "My little devil, tease your eyebrows, let you like this world." The lyrics of Baby, that Yang Yi had chosen were very sweet, and Murphy sang it very wholeheartedly. The strong love and affection flowed from her soft and beautiful voice into the hearts of Shishi and every audience. Not only was Cece happy to hear this, but the other mothers also looked at Yang Yi and Mo Fei, who were playing and singing together, with envy and admiration. How nice! To be able to sing such a sweet song to her child on her birthday was the most wonderful surprise. Look at how happy Shishi is. Wahahaha, my baby, when you're tired, there's someone to accompany you. My baby, I want you to know that you're the most beautiful. When Murphy sang this part of the song, her body swayed gently as if she was dancing. Then she reached out a finger and pointed at Shishi with a smile. Shishi heard her mother say that she was the most beautiful. The little girl was instantly overjoyed. Her two big eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Even the tip of her crescent moon seemed to be overflowing with happiness. That's right. In the hearts of your parents, you are the most beautiful. My baby. Chapter 1164. While Murphy and Yang Yi were singing, Yang Luoqi, Lu Xiaoyu, and the other children looked at Shishi enviously. Even Lu Weisha, who did not understand the song, felt that the melody was nice. She happily clapped her hands with her friends and twisted her body to the rhythm. But don't think that Cece is a bright moon surrounded by stars. The two little guys were indifferent to this. Needless to say, one of them was Lan Exine. Lan Exine was not in the mood to watch the performance because she had finished a piece of cake. Yes, she still wanted to eat more, and did not think about whether there would be more delicious food later. Following the principle of enjoying herself today, the little girl went to the back of the table, avoided the eyes of the crowd, and used the plastic knife that Shishi had placed on the table to cut a big piece of cake for herself. Lanqing was not as fastidious as Cece. The cake rolled into her plate. The cake lay softly on the plate, and her fingers were stained with cream. What did it matter? She could just lick it off later. Seeing such a big piece of cake on her plate, Lan Exine burped with satisfaction. She looked at Tong Tong, who was sitting on the chair beside her and eating the cake with a small spoon. Tong Tong was the other one who was indifferent. He had heard his mother sing this song before, and did not feel that it was anything new. He had sung this song to Huawei before. Sister? Humph, it was only second hand. Therefore, Tong Tong was arranged by Murphy to eat the cake by himself. Although Wu Jingjing was looking after him, the little boy was addicted to the delicious cake. His nose, chin, and clothes were stained with cream. How could he have the time to watch his parents' performance? Let alone his parents. Even Sister Lan Exine looked at him and smiled. Tong Tong did not even look at her. There weren't many performances at the birthday party this time. It wasn't like the past when everyone performed for Shishi. Only Yang Yi and Murphy sang a song for Shishi. Other than that, everyone gave Shishi birthday wishes when they sang the birthday song. However, Shishi was still very happy. After all the friends she often played with were there. They did not pursue any program. They played from morning to afternoon, and ran all over the villa. Laughter filled every corner. Such simple happiness was enough to make Shishi feel satisfied. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, the little friends and their parents left one after another, and the villa gradually quieted down. Shishi was very reluctant, and even a little sad. Fortunately, her father coaxed her with the big gimmick of opening presents. This year, Shishi had quite a lot of presents that could be opened for her. Almost every child brought a birthday present for Shishi when they came with their parents. Yang Yi did not open the presents at noon. Instead, he waited for all the children to go home and the villa to be quiet. Only then did Yang Yi pull out the big basket with the presents and give it to Shishi. After all, everyone's situation was different, and the presents they gave were different. Yang Yi did not want Shishi to open the presents in front of them. If there was a comparison, there would be hurt. What was there to compare? Of course, this would be a slap in the face soon. For example, the birthday present that Shishi was opening from Lu Xiaoyu was not expensive at all. It was just a painting that Lu Xiaoyu had drawn herself. It depicted a scene of them playing table tennis. The painting was a little abstract, but Shishi liked it very much. However, if she opened it in front of them, Lu Xiaoyu might feel inferior when she saw other children giving better presents to Shishi. Naturally, she would not feel good about it. Shishi, ask Chen to help you. Look at him. He wants to learn from his sister and open the presents together. Murphy watched Shishi open the presents from the side. Her ears were filled with the little girl's cheers from time to time. Her hands were itching to open the presents, but she was too embarrassed to fight with her daughter to open the presents. She smiled and nudged Tong Tong, who was looking at his sister enviously. Tong Tong was a little dumbfounded. He turned his little head and looked at his mother in confusion. That's not right. I'm just envious of my sister's ability to take out so many magical little things from those big and small boxes. How did I become wanting to help? Okay. Little brother, help me open the presents. Shishi was in a good mood as she opened the presents. Her eyes were squinted from smiling. Her slender and delicate eyelashes covered her eyes like air bangs. She was as beautiful as the stars in the sky. Little mommy had no choice but to sit beside her older sister. She imitated her older sister's actions and helped her older sister tear the wrapping paper off the gift box. Here, follow this line and tear it. Mom will teach you, Murphy said excitedly. She sat next to Chun Chun and bent over with a grin. She held Tong Tong's hand and taught him step by step. The basket of presents was quickly opened. The last one was Lan's Hao Kai and his family's birthday present for Shishi. After Yang Yi's reminder, Murphy gently opened the box and took out the diamond necklace for Shishi. Wow! It's a necklace! Shishi's eyes lit up and she exclaimed happily. It was indeed a beautiful diamond necklace. The necklace was in the shape of a snowflake and was inlaid with many sparkling and translucent diamonds. It was obviously very expensive. Of course, this was nothing compared to Lan's Hao Kai's or Yang Yi's wealth. Usually, when Yang Yi and Murphy celebrated anniversaries, Yang Yi would ask someone to help him buy the jewelry from overseas auctions and give it to Murphy. It was much more expensive than this necklace. Wu Jingjing's jewelry was even more expensive. She often went to auctions to buy her favorite works of art and jewelry. Her family's collection was even more exaggerated. Perhaps this necklace was what Wu Jingjing said when she explained it to Lan's Hao Kai. It was not too expensive and she gave it to Shishi so that she wouldn't attract too much attention when she grew up. Shishi hurriedly got up from the ground and ran to her mother's side excitedly. She leaned on her mother's arm and hugged her mother's neck curiously and nervously. She giggled and looked at the necklace. Is it beautiful? Murphy asked Shishi with a smile. She held up the necklace with both hands and the snowflake diamonds that were refracted by the light were dangling gently. It's beautiful. Shishi nodded quickly and said happily, Mom, I don't have a necklace. You have a lot, but I finally have one. Murphy said with a smile. Then you can ask your papa to buy it for you in the future. He definitely won't be reluctant to buy it for you. After teasing Yang Yi, Murphy asked Shishi to bend her head. She untied the necklace and put it on Shishi. After putting it on, the little girl happily ran to the mirror. Although she wasn't wearing a dress, she still happily twirled around. Wow! The little girl in the mirror is so beautiful. The beautiful necklace can set off her pretty little face. Oh, this inner monologue made Shishi feel a little embarrassed. She giggled and shyly raised her hands to hold her red little face. Ahem. Yang Yi saw that Shishi liked the birthday gift very much and decisively became unhappy. He coughed twice and said, Shishi, let Mom put the necklace away for you. You haven't opened the gift I and Mom gave you yet. There's a gift? Papa and Mom's gift. I want it, I want it. She cried out in surprise. Like a crab, she turned sideways and bounced back with her long legs. In the little girl's heart, her parents' gift was always the best. Therefore, she was even happier than when she saw the diamond necklace. How could Yang Yi let her down? You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.